Let's get started. All right. All right, let's get started. Kara, are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize for the delay. We had an executive session right before this, which went a little over, and wanted to give the board members and people a little break before we start. All right, let's get started. This public regular meeting of the Board of Education for February 4th, 2025 is called to order. All items being considered this evening are posted on the PPS website under the Board and Meetings tab. This meeting is being streamed live on PPS TV Services website and on Channel 28 and will be replayed to the next 2 weeks. Please check the district website for replay times. Good evening and welcome. Thank you for being here and caring about public education. Thank you all for, before we get started, I want to share a few housekeeping reminders. We ask that everyone attending tonight's meeting, members of public staff, board members, treat each other with respect. We are excited that you have taken time out of your day to be here and get involved with our school district, whether to testify or observe. If you wish to display signs or banners, we ask that you please keep them below chin level so not to block the person behind you. For reasons of safety, you also need to keep the walkways and aisles clear. In general, would appreciate if everyone can be mindful of others in the room. Lastly, I also want to welcome Director Chrissy Splitt as this is her first regular meeting. Really appreciate you taking a huge chunk of your life to do this volunteer, non-paid job to help oversee our wonderful school district. So thank you. Next up, I also want to, Director Hollins has a little presentation he would like to do.
Yes. So there's a educator in the building who has spent over 56 years with our kiddos. And so I have something that I want to say to her. So I would love if Miss Jan Watts could come up to the podium, please. She has over 56 years of service.
You must have started when you were very, very young.
So I wrote something out for you, and I was just going to put it in a card and give it to you, but I wanted to make sure you heard it from me. I found myself genuinely moved by your remarkable legacy. Your dedication of 56 years to the educating and uplifting of our young minds is a remarkable achievement. And your steadfast commitment to this noble calling is nothing short of extraordinary. For more than half a century, you have dedicated not only your time, but also your heart and your soul to the lives of countless students. Your patience, wisdom, unwavering belief in the potential of every child make you so much more than an educator. You have been a guide, mentor, and inspiration to many generations. Your efforts demonstrates that education transcends mere knowledge transfer. It's about nurturing confidence, sparking curiosity, and enabling students to recognize their own value. 56 years is not merely a milestone. It represents a remarkable legacy. Your influence is reflected in the achievements of the students you've guided, in the heartfelt appreciation of families whose children you nurtured, and an enduring legacy you've created within the community. Through every lesson, every word of encouragement, and every challenge you help a student overcome, you have made a lasting impact that will resonate years to come. Your remarkable journey highlights the incredible impact of commitment and passion for your work. Your influence extends beyond your students to touch the hearts of your colleagues, parents, and now myself, as well as everyone lucky enough to be in your presence. When generations of families speak your name, it will resonate with profound admiration, recognizing that their dreams and achievements are built on the foundation you helped lay. On behalf of all the lives you touched, I express my heartfelt gratitude. I truly appreciate the late nights, testimonies at school board meetings, the early mornings, and the sacrifices you've made to ensure that every child you encounter had the chance to thrive. Your presence shines brightly, illustrating the significant impact that an individual can have on the world around them. So as you reflect on these 56 years of service, may you feel a deep sense of pride knowing that your work has truly transformed lives. Your legacy will always be cherished by those fortunate enough to have learned and collaborated with you. So with sincere admiration and warm appreciation, thank you.
I'm sitting here in year 57, not going into the building every day, but keeping my eye on all of you. Because I want to live long enough to walk into a new Cleveland high school that we have been waiting for way too long, as others have. And also because I will never, ever forget how it felt when we have successes and how it feels when kids are down. That's when I'm at my best. When kids are down, I want to see those kids be so friggin' pumped when they walk into that building. And I want to be able to say to them that even though I left them daily, I'm here to help them see that. I really, really mean that. As you said, it's for the kids. Absolutely. And I appreciate you very much.
Okay, I've got to chime in here because, Jan, you just can't walk away from the, the lectern like that. So as somebody who's known you for over 25 years, when I first got on the school board, I'm going to say that you used to scare me.
Used to scare Mr. Hollins.
And, then I became, when I was first on the school board from 2001 to 2005, we were working on the Cleveland Field Project that took over a decade. And then I went off the board. And then in the midst of the time when I went off the board, I became a parent. And lo and behold, I became a parent at Cleveland. And oh my God, there's the legendary Jan Watts. So there was hardly a sporting event in which Jan wasn't up in the box, taking stats, helping with whoever was announcing the game, or doing the introductions. And then always an ever presence and really the spirit of Cleveland. And then I came back on the board again. God, and you were still there. I was a little less scared of you though then. Although I will say, if you did a Cleveland graduation when Jan was the special projects person and you were the board speaker and you went to the rehearsal, oh my God, you knew that nobody was going to misbehave on graduation day because Jan made very clear what was going to happen if you misbehaved. And I just want to say, I so appreciate that you are just I think green and yellow runs in your veins, and you always are advocating for Cleveland students and the Cleveland community. And I think it's just so classic that when Director Hollins gives you a tribute, you take the opportunity to once again advocate for Cleveland. And I guarantee you're not going to walk into the remodeled Cleveland in an urn.
Okay, thank you. I much prefer. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Jan, for everything you've done.
That's awesome. All right, tonight we will begin with the resolution that recognizes February as Black History Month. Superintendent Armstrong, could you introduce this item?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Wong, board directors and student director. I appreciate you being here this evening. As we enter Black History Month, we are reminded of the vital role that education plays in fostering a deep understanding of our shared past and the ongoing journey towards equality and justice. This is not only an opportunity for reflection, but also a call to action to engage and learn year-round. Tonight, we have some members of our school teams to share out how we are celebrating Black history in our schools. So I'm going to invite Isaac Cardona, Senior Director of Schools, and Margaret Calvert, Assistant Superintendent of School Improvement and Modernization. They are here to introduce their teams. And while they are making their way up, I want to also recognize that today, February 4th, is Rosa Parks Day, a day in which we recognize the civil rights leader on her birthday. And I understand that we have a brief video of students from her namesake school here in Portland celebrating. So we'll watch the video, and then after the video, I'll turn it over to the two of you. Thank you.
We ride with Rosa today, and we're gonna show our pictures and sing it, the song. See your photo. And then this is my photo.
Happy Rosa Parks Day. First of all, let's say that. Big round of applause. Happy Rosa Parks Day. Yeah. And every February 4th, TriMet will not collect fares as an honor to Rosa Parks. We will not do that on any of our buses. We ride with Rosa through the streets of change. We ride with Rosa on our way to brighter days.
About a special project that TriMet was working on to celebrate Rosa Parks, and I immediately was like, okay, I have not written a song about Rosa Parks yet, although I've written lots of children's songs.
We ride with Rosa through the streets of change. We ride with Rosa on our way to brighter days.
All right, thank you for having us today. My name is Isaac Cardona. I'm the Senior Director of K-8 Schools. It's good to see you all again. And first, thank you to Chair Wong, Director DePass, Director Hollins, Director Green for coming out to Vernon K-8 this past week for a parent listening session. Really appreciated that. But prior to this role, I was the principal of Jason Lee Elementary School in Northeast Portland, and I'm proud today to talk about the work that they've been doing with Black Brilliance. I'd love to call to the stage Principal Alma Velasquez and Miss Miriam Lowe, the Sun Site Manager. You might recognize Miss Lowe as from last year. She was a PPS All-Star Award winner for the incredible contributions that she's made to the Madison South / McDaniel cluster. But they're going to talk about some of the work that they've been doing and are currently doing to celebrate Black History Month and Black Brilliance.
Hello, everyone. My name is Miriam Lowe. I am the site manager, Sun Site Manager over at Jason Lee Elementary. Not a public speaker, so this is really hard, and this is why I had both of my previous principal and my current principal here to support me. And good to see that all you guys are smiling and it's not so serious, so it makes me feel a little better.
Just us.
When I first started this job, one of the main questions was, what can you do to bridge the gap between families of color coming into the school? They were having a big problem with a lot of the families just coming in for their kids when they're in trouble, or they need to be talked to about something. And so my answer was, everyone loves to have a good meal and some good music. And so that was my way of getting my way into the door. But then I had to check myself and say, well, I said it, so I need to come up with something. I am at my home. I am the person who throws a party. So I said, okay, everybody wants to be a part of a party, so let's do it. But then I said, I need it to be different. It has to be different. We can't always do bless the road that they have served for us in our history, but let's do something outside of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. Let's do something different. Let's find the brilliance in the history that we have had in these years of America that blacks have put on this earth. So I said at one point, my school needs to learn the Black National Anthem. What happened? We came together, and every Friday, those kids would have that piece of paper in front of their face, and they would learn the Black National Anthem, and we would play it over the loudspeaker, and every Friday, that is what we did. I changed the aspect of what the educators was doing with the students. Don't just give them Martin Luther King and teach them what he did. We have scientists. We have poets. We have many different people in our walk of life, in history, that we need to let our children know. We don't naturally get Black history in our public schools unless we have gotten it from our parents or from a class that a student has taken outside of PPS. So that was my biggest thing, was to bring something that all of these students would be able to see, that it's just not one person or 3 people that have made a change in this history. It is many that have made a change. And so from that point on, my Black brilliance has been the brilliance of all Black people. And so I would decorate the hallways with dolls of all kinds of history and all of the fraternities and sororities I had come out. I had line dancing come out. I had Black hair cutters come out, braiders come out. All of this was free. At some point in the beginning when I started, I was looking for everything for free. Everything is donated. I don't want to have to pay for nothing. You guys got to come out your pocket. And Isaac was like, Miriam, we got to use this money, so you got to spend it on something. And so I got the top DJ. Portland's top DJ, Mike Morris, came in and he did his thing, and he has been doing it every year. He doesn't even live here anymore, and he comes all the way back just for this. The 503 Steppers, they come out and they dance for us. And so it is so good to see that we bring the history in Oregon. We had break dancers come in and them tell where that came from and the hip hop side. So that is mainly what I want my community to see and come from, is to see what we have created from our history to now and where we're at. And that was my way of bridging those families and feeling like they're comfortable to see someone of their own face and their own color in the school that normally didn't have any people of color in it. And so I was bridging the gap between, now they don't think of me as a site manager. I'm either auntie or mom. And so those families come in and they feel comfortable with talking and having those gaps bridged between the principal or a teacher and having me in the classroom to support them as well. So it is just a lot more than the Black brilliance. It is to make sure that everybody that walks through that door feels comfortable with being at Jason Lee. And so that is what I mainly felt like I was there to do. And I hope that I have done that and succeeded in trying to continue to do it. So that is what Black brilliance for me is to bring the history of Blackness into the school system.
And when is Black Brilliance this year?
This year, Black Brilliance will be February 27th from 5 to 7. Again, we will have the DJ, and Tasha Taylor will come out and cook and cater. So we have some of the top people who will be in Jason Lee. So come on out and dance, and we'll have the steppers out and enjoy Jason Lee and what we bring to the plate. So thank you.
I just want to add, Alma Velasquez, principal at Jason Lee. Good evening, Director, Superintendent Armstrong. What Ms. Miriam didn't tell you is that in the process of all the events that she organized, she created a very strong community and an identity of a community as a place where Black brilliance could be highlighted. I came to Jason Lee in the fall of 2020. We were not able to have the event live, but it happened. It happened, and what you were able to see that year was virtually all the families coming together, people from their kitchens sharing recipes, crafts, their art, and in so many ways still highlighting the brilliance within our community. And ever since it has continued, it continues every year to be the most important event that we have and the one that people look forward to. Our teachers organize lessons around that based on the many different aspects of Black brilliance. And so it truly is part of our community and something that we are very grateful to Ms. Miriam for having brought to us and having really maintained all this time.
COVID didn't stop me either. We had it in the parking lot. We danced in the parking lot. We gave out gifts, and so that didn't stop us either. Every year we have had it, and nothing has stopped us from going to have Black Brilliance.
I hope that you're letting the kids listen to country music, because we just had the first Black woman get the country music album of the year.
Was that Beyonce?
Beyonce.
Amen to that, yes. I love it.
I'd just like to say, you said you're not a public speaker, but yes, you are.
You don't know how my hands are sweaty. Yeah, so I have worked in many parts of the district. I am a basketball coach as well, so I coach for the cluster. I coached for high school. I coach St. Andrews, and Jason Lee, undefeated last year, Jefferson, and McDaniels, and so I have been a coach in the system as well. That's where I first started. I am actually a nurse, but I came from that to hear the laughter of students. That is what brought the happiness to me. So that's what keeps me in there, is because of those babies. So you're welcome.
Good evening, directors and Superintendent Armstrong. I'd like to call down Principal Katie Parman from Roosevelt High School, who brought a couple of, go ahead, let's clap it up. Who brought some virtual students with her, I think, tonight. Hope that they are able to get in. But part of the work that has happened over a number of years across the city has really taken shape at Roosevelt, and sort of in the embracing of where are the opportunities to learn about the variety of things that have impacted our history here in Portland, as well as the students' lives in North Portland in particular, and then how students have been able to incorporate that into their, how they devise, plan, look for opportunities to bring their community of students together. So I want to just thank Katie Parman and the students and staff at Roosevelt High School for building a strong legacy of support and celebration in the month of February and throughout the year. And just really want to, again, just turn it over to Principal Parman, and at least one student has joined us. So this is great.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me. I think Marion is there. Are you there? Is Gloria with you?
Yes, I'm right here.
I see Gloria in the attendees section, but she's declined the request to be a panelist. So
Gloria,
she accepts that.
Accept the request to be a panelist. So these two students, Marian Hassan and Gloria Zawadi, are part of our Black Student Union. When I came to Roosevelt in 2019, we had a strong history of celebrating Trayvon Martin's birthday with a Hoodies Up celebration. Our students continue that through the pandemic, and when we came back from the pandemic, our Black Student Union decided to do something different. And so the assemblies and the celebrations that we do during Black History Month are very much run by and for our students. And so I want to turn it over to them so they can share what their plans are, and then I can talk a little bit about how that connects to the instruction that we're doing.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Gloria Zawadi. I'm a senior at Roosevelt High School, and I'm also the president of the Black Student Union here at Roosevelt. We're currently in the process of planning for this year's Black History Month Assembly that will be on Friday, the 21st, I believe. I have been a part of the planning committee throughout all 4 years of high school, but this is my first time taking charge as the head president. Although we're still in the process of planning this year's assembly, nothing is quite like set in stone. So we'll be meeting tomorrow to discuss how that will look like. But in the past, I have, like I said, been involved in planning and have also been a part of the assembly as a dancer. In the previous year, last year, I did 2 dance performances with one of my friends who was a senior who graduated last year. And we did one African performance and then one hip hop performance, just to like highlight different aspects of the African diaspora. Besides our Black History Month assembly that we have every year, that is a big part of what Black History Month looks like at Roosevelt, we also have what we call our Black Lives Matter of Action, which I will turn over to Marion to speak more about.
Yes, hi, my name is Marion Hussein. I'm also a senior here at Roosevelt. And for the years that I've been at Roosevelt, we had this Black Action Week for Black History Month to kind of shed light on important parts of history and just to kind of give us time to understand and acknowledge and recognize a Black history and uplift one another and even educate one another as well. And throughout this time, classes and teachers teach us about specific stuff within history. Like in my photography class right now, we just currently watched a documentary about Gordon Parks, a very influential photographer who challenged stereotypes and harsh realities that were put on Black individuals and people of color in general, and how influential he was and how we can challenge those beliefs as well and kind of carry those stuff with us. So like that's one important thing we do in our classes. And also just kind of using this week to just appreciate one another and understand and educate. And it's like a very important week for us and I really appreciate it. And like with BSU as well, we just kind of use this whole month in itself to just hold each other and like uplift each other and just again recognize. And it's a very important month for us, especially for people who really don't want to appreciate it. It kind of gives us a chance to educate and help them recognize the importance this month holds for a lot of us. Thank you.
They were great. That's exactly what we do. So one last thing, our ethnic studies classes, all of our students take a U.S. History ethnic studies class in their junior year. In the past, they've kind of highlighted different Black artists and scholars through some posters that they fill the building with. And this year they've shifted and they're going to be creating zines. I didn't know people did that still, but the students will be creating zines so they can go a little more in depth about who these people were and how they brought forward advancements in different places in scholarship, in athletics, in all sorts of different things. So I'm really excited to see the zines that should be coming out later this month. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for an amazing presentation. Before we move on, just a quick word I want to say. Black History Month, right? There's so many reasons and purposes for Black History Month, but there's 2 that I really want to highlight. One is to recognize all the amazing educators, from principals, staff, teachers, and students who have worked through the decades to change and kind of disrupt the old habits of exclusion, right? Black history is American history. At the same time, another purpose for Black History Month is to also remember that we're in this together. We're all part of a big movement to change old habits of exclusion. And in order to change old habits, whether it's in your daily life, from putting away the dishes to what you teach in history, takes targeted and deliberate action. And so this is a reminder that our work is not done, but we're in this together. So thank you. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 7044, Proclamation and Recognition of February as Black History Month?
Second.
Thank you. I have Director Split moves and Director Hollins seconds. Any board discussion?
Yes, I kind of wrote something up. Wasn't sure if I was going to read it or not. But hearing you speak, I think I will. I've been reflecting on this whole education system, and I've been doing a lot of reading and a lot of reflection. And so this is what I wrote. America, we have a problem. In 1860, Mississippi Senator Jefferson Davis stood in the U.S. Senate and opposed the Morrill Land Grant Act, a bill that would have funded education for black people. It took 30 years before the second Morrill Act of 1890 to finally force states to provide land institutions for black students, but only if they wanted federal funding. Meanwhile, public education for white students had already begun in 1647, 213 years earlier. And even after that, Jim Crow laws locked black students into second-class education until 1954, and we really didn't have full desegregation happening until the early 70s. Why did this matter? Because right now, in the 99th year of celebrating black achievement, we have the President of the United States trying to erase our history, our contributions, our struggles, our victories, our voices, by trying to eliminate things like DEI and, in my own opinion, public education. America, we have a problem. I'm gonna say it again. America, we have a problem. This is a system still clinging to white supremacist ideology while still whispering our children are not as good. Still pushing studies and tests designed to tell minorities we are behind when compared to white students. But let's ask who controls that narrative. This is the same system that once refused to educate our children. The same system that had to send the National Guard to escort black children into schools. The same system that forced Asian students into segregated Oriental schools from 1850 to 1920. This is the same system that used special education to exclude Mexican children for speaking their native language. The same system that ripped Native Americans from their families and forced them into boarding schools to erase their culture. America, we have a problem. But we will no longer let your studies, your skewed facts, your whitewashed versions of history define us. We will not accept your barbaric hunger for power and control. We will not let you dictate the standard of success for our children. Our children are brilliant. They are right where they need to be. They're navigating their own futures, writing their own stories. Their success does not need to be measured against anyone else anymore. Every black doctor, engineer, teacher, CEO, or superintendent, every electrician, plumber, truck driver, lawyer, or elected official, that is success. That's the legacy that we're teaching here. That is the truth we uphold, and that is what we will fight to protect. America, we have a problem, and we're not ignoring it anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hollins. Ms. Brashaw, is there any public comment?
Before
sorry.
you leave board discussion, so I just want to, you mentioned black educators, Chair Wong. I wanted just to speak to some other black excellence in PPS. And I'm going to go back to 2001 when I was elected to the board with Alonzo Poe and Derry Jackson. And we had a student rep at the time, John L. Bell. All great I know, it's funny. He was a junior at Benson. I know, it's hard to believe he's an adult now. Examples of black excellence. And then when I came back to the board in 2017, and then had the opportunity to serve with Director DePass. And then in 2021, an opportunity, a historic moment to be elected at the same time that Director Hollins and Director Green were elected, and to have for the first time three black members of the board, black excellence, and then to have JJ join us at the dais. So I feel like we're really blessed. We've got great educators and great principals who are examples of black excellence, but also on this board. And we can, of course, not recognize our superintendent as well. So we have quite a blessing of excellence, and I just want to call that out. So I feel very privileged to have had the opportunity to work with all of you here and both Lorenzo Derry and John L. as well.
And is there any public comment?
There's not.
All right. Thank you all. We will now vote on Resolution 7044, proclamation and recognition of February as Black History Month. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Student Representative Kasavi, please indicate your vote.
Yes.
All right, Resolution 7044 is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Representative Kasavi unofficially voting yes. Thank you. Next up, we have the Superintendent's Report. Superintendent Armstrong, would you like to go for it?
Absolutely. Excuse me, sorry. Absolutely. I think the slides are being queued up. It's a short superintendent's report this evening. Maybe if I talk slow enough, the slides will pop up. Yes, in case you're curious, it is day 92 of school days, and so that 100 days of school transition plan will be realized come February 14th, which will mark 100 days of school. So this evening, I wanted to, through my superintendent's report, introduce three humans who have joined the team in Portland, and so I'm going to ask the three of them to come forward while I just say a couple of words. I'll just start speaking, and then they'll have a chance to introduce themselves to you as well. We have Candace Gross, our Chief of Communications. She is coming with industry expertise and experience in public schools. Her last position was as Deputy Chief of Communications for the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, where she led the district's brand campaign, The Future of CMSD. We are excited to have her here. We also have Michelle Morrison, who came to us just a few stops away on the freeway from Hillsborough School District, where she has served as Chief Financial Officer since 2018. Then we have Nicole Watson, who has been with us for several months. And so through a couple of resignations, we were able to officially bring her on board as Senior Director of Engagement. Nicole is currently the president of the Oregon Association of Black School Educators, past principal in Park Rose School District, and former Portland Public Schools teacher.
Welcome back.
So I have asked
Welcome
them, yes, to just share a few words as they introduce themselves, and that will conclude my report. So starting off with Candace.
Can you all hear me? Okay, there we go. Good evening, Chair Wong, Vice Chair DePass, and please forgive me if I am mispronouncing names, just correct me. PPS Board of Directors, Student Director, Superintendent Armstrong, and members of the Portland Public Schools community. Sorry about that. I'm honored to be here tonight and grateful for the opportunity to introduce myself. I'm excited about the possibility of serving as the Chief of Communications for Portland Public Schools. At my core, I do believe that communications is more than delivering information. It's about building trust, fostering transparency, and ensuring that every stakeholder feels informed, valued, and connected to the mission of PPS. Portland Public Schools is at a pivotal moment right now, and I see communications as a powerful tool to strengthen relationships, elevate the district's vision, and drive engagement in a way that turns our stakeholders into our partners, and in student success. My vision for communications at PPS is rooted in three areas: clarity, accessibility, and impact. And so with that, I'm just super excited to be here, and I'm excited to call Portland home. I'm still trying to get acclimated to this 3-hour time zone difference, but I think with time I will catch up to that, so thank you.
Michelle. You're going in the order of your recency, so.
Oh,
yes.
oh, hello. Thank you for having me here this evening and for many evenings to come, I'm sure. I'm just thrilled to be a part of Portland Public Schools. I have served in public finance and schools for 25 years, and I'm hoping that I can really bring a lens and practical accountability to this role, and just very thankful for the predecessors, prior leadership, current leadership, our communications officer is going to be amazing to work with as well, and a lot of our goals are shared in terms of transparency, accountability, and building trust in our community. Very thankful to be here.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nicole Watson. It's good to be home. I'm excited. This is the district of my classroom roots. I was a student in this district, a classroom teacher in this district, and now to be able to return back as a senior director is feeling very kismet and blessed, as Director Brim Edwards shared. If you know anything about me, you know that family and community engagement is something that is central to my heart, to who I am as a person. I believe that we must build bridges between classrooms and communities, but we must build those bridges. And so I am elated to work alongside Dr. Armstrong and our team to be able to build and erect a bridge that our students, families, and educators can cross between and around and from. I think that engagement is more than just an event. It needs to be authentic. It has to be because we care. It has to be because we're willing to listen. And it feels very much that at a time where we need to be listening to one another, that this district is ready to do just that. So I'm excited to be home. I can't wait to get to work. And it's really lovely to be with you all tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, team. And I just want to acknowledge that we had an educator town hall last night, and we will have a community town hall on budget tomorrow at 6 p.m. And I should have had the image to show more information about that, but all of that information can be found on our website at pps.net. Thank you. And as always, together we rise.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we're going to go up to public comment. We're going to start with student comment. I just want to note for the board, I did kind of change the the format just a little bit. We had 3 people signed up for public comment during the consent agenda. And for the sake of not having them wait till 9 o'clock, I figure I move them to the general public comment right after. And the idea is that, A, they can go a little earlier, and then also just kind of be a better flow, just have all the public comment go together. So if you notice in the public comment, in the regular, there's 6 slots. That's just because we moved the consent agenda public comment up. So first off, we're going to start off with student comment. Student comments. Ms. Brasha, do we have anyone signed up for student comments?
We do. Kalel Jackson.
Anyone else? That's it.
Nobles.
All right, let's move on to regular public comment. Let's call up our first 3, and then I'll go over the rules.
Greg Davenport, Jason Caffrey, Suzanne Clark.
All right, before you begin, I just kind of want to go over the rules again. Thank you for being here today. Our public comment is very important and informs our work. So thank you for taking your time out of your evening. I know there's a lot of great things to do, like watching a movie on the couch. Yeah, calling your legislator. So, a couple of things. Our board office may follow up on board-related issues raised during public testimony. We request that complaints about individual employees be directed to the superintendent's office as a personnel matter. For materials you'd like the board to receive, handout pictures, etc., please give them over to Ms. Bradshaw over there, and she'll distribute them to us. If you have any additional materials or items that you would like to provide to the board or superintendent, we ask that you email them to public comment, all one word, at pps.net. Please make sure that when you begin your comment, before we do that, especially if it involves students, we ask that there not be any identifiable names, etc., that could potentially identify a name or violate FERPA laws. Where am I? Oh yeah, when you begin your comments, please clearly state your name and spell your last name. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. You will hear sound after 3 minutes, which means that you'll have 30 seconds to wrap up your comments. All right, whoever wants to go first may go.
Greg Davenport, Davenport. Welcome, Ms. Split, to the board. The rest of the board and Dr. Armstrong may recall that I met with you on September 24th. The board voted 6-1 that Heather Roberts, varsity basketball coach at Lincoln High School, deliberately retaliated against my son and family by withholding vital communications. This retaliation was in addition to the harassment, intimidation, and retaliation that had already been substantiated in the investigation report conducted by Deborah Hermosillo and Marshall Haskins. Heather Roberts' unprofessional conduct continues to occur since we last met. Roberts is now retaliating against my youngest son, who is a freshman at Lincoln. My sons have done nothing wrong. Heather Roberts has threatened to sue me personally unless I stop reporting her unprofessional and retaliatory behaviors. This is classic behavior of a bully who takes zero responsibility for their own misconduct and blames others. The victimizer claiming to be the victim. Lincoln Athletic Director Matt Wiles sent a memo dated December 6 to parents of Lincoln basketball players, quote, "We want you to know that PPS's investigation did not find evidence of homophobic or racially discriminatory behavior within the Lincoln basketball program." This statement by Athletic Director Matt Wiles is false. On October 2nd, Mr. Wiles spoke to the parent who witnessed and corroborated Heather Roberts say unprovoked to a group of black students, "You guys doing gang signs?" Dr. Armstrong, please investigate Mr. Wiles' so-called investigation, who he interviewed, and the circumstances that led him to release this memo. You may also want to investigate Wiles and Roberts' work history together in previous roles and who hired Wiles as athletic director at Lincoln last summer and who provided a recommendation. Recently, I and other parents of Lincoln students have filed complaints with the Oregon Department of Education regarding Heather Roberts' conduct and how PPS administration has mismanaged this avoidable situation. We urge that PPS and ODE take immediate action to launch a real investigation into Roberts' alleged homophobic and racist behaviors, interview the students who were witnesses, none have been interviewed so far, and investigate the continued retaliation directed at our sons and other students at Lincoln High School. Dr. Armstrong, as you're aware, the ODE last week has accepted my complaint and will be conducting their own investigation. Please reach out to me if I could be of any assistance in your response to ensure its accuracy. Roberts has deliberately destroyed my son's junior and freshman year of basketball, something that never can be replaced. Please don't allow Roberts to continue her vindictive, retaliatory behaviors that is ruining their basketball high school experience. This is Heather Roberts' 4th year as basketball coach at Lincoln. This season, Lincoln varsity basketball team has won 2 games and lost 14. The team is currently ranked 45th out of 49 6A teams. The average margin of defeat is greater than 21 points a game. They're not even competitive in games they lose. This is not a sign of a maturing or competitive program under Roberts' leadership. One of Roberts' personal attorneys has one of Roberts' starting varsity players' father is also one of her attorneys. This attorney filed Roberts' tort claim against PPS in September and October, according to the Willamette and Oregonian. Seems like a conflict of interest to me, along with many others that has occurred. I thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Matt. Jason Kafoury, K-A-F-O-U-R-Y. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Kafoury and McDougall. I'm here talking to you, though, in my personal capacity. This Lincoln High School story and this basketball coach hits hard for me. I was a Lincoln High School basketball player myself, 93 to 96. My coach, Mitch Whitehurst, you may remember that name, multi-decades, Portland Public Schools would ship Mitch Whitehurst to different places, and he abused people. And the school knew about it, and it took a lawsuit to actually uncover the truth about what really happened with my basketball coach. These are really serious allegations. There are multiple students that heard her use homophobic slurs, and I don't even want to say it, it's so bad, but it starts with an F, and describing other players, describing other people, describing how they look. Is that the kind of school, is that the kind of student-athlete experience that we should be having at a Portland public school? I liked Gary Holland's statement a lot about problems nationally and what's happening. We have a serious problem here at Lincoln High School. This is pretty easy to investigate. We've got multiple kids that will come and say, if asked by a real investigator, yeah, I heard her say it. So for Portland Public Schools coming out and putting out a PR statement saying we, quote, fully investigated this when no one was interviewed is really not okay. That's not the way that you as the board should allow our Portland school folks to act. So let's have a real investigation. Some of the best players, including his sons, have not been allowed to play basketball this year because their families had the courage to stand up to this coach. And you know what? Think about what they're losing. They're losing the ability to put on their resume when they apply to college that they were a senior or a junior basketball player. They're losing their dreams, the things they spent their whole life playing, because a vindictive, retaliatory coach kicks some of the best players off because their parents complain about them. Is that the kind of school system that we want to operate within in our community, the city that works? Look, this is easy to investigate. There's plenty of allegations out there. And the truth is, you guys have the files. Her assistant basketball coach also filed a complaint about her, okay? It's not just players, it's the assistant coach also. You guys have the internal files. Someone needs to start taking this seriously and go through and look at all the complaints. The Willamette Week's been asking for this. You guys are denying their public record request, but there's real smoke here that needs to be investigated. And there's real kids that are losing out. And it's not fair to them. It's not fair to them to have a bullying coach who's retaliatory and treating people this way. My dad has a great closing argument. He says, you know what? For the rest of your life, if a bully rubs your nose in the ground, you're going to taste that dirt. And if you're a kid and you run down and you fall down and you taste dirt in your mouth, you get up and spit it right out. There are a lot of kids that are facing long-term emotional distress damages for what this coach is doing. I just filed a very high-profile case against Western Oregon University last week. Went all over the country, focusing on this abusive type behavior by coaches and administrators that wouldn't do the right thing. I implore you, take this seriously, do a real investigation, and I would like to not have any more abusive behavior by this coach toward any more of our student athletes in our community. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Clark, C-L-A-R-K-E. For over a decade, my family has been part of the Roosevelt, Ockley Green, and Beach School communities. I often think about all of the planning, discussion, and angst you all experienced around capital bonds. I think about how if PPS had the funds to support healthy class sizes, funds to provide staff to maintain school buildings and grounds, funds to offer all students their best outcomes, then the capital bonds would be a no-brainer and overwhelmingly supported by our community. It is a testament to Portland's support for public education that the bonds continue to pass despite the legislature's decades-long neglect when it comes to funding everything else about our schools. Portlanders should absolutely continue to support these bonds, and I hope the board will stand up for students and send a letter to the Oregonian's editorial board to remind it that PPS is leading the nation in its effort to have more efficient and sustainable buildings. If Oregon fully funded the QEM to create excellent schools, fewer people would be questioning PPS's school construction budgets. Today, I heard that Senator Weber's newsletter said that she and her Republican colleagues are fighting to expand school choice in Oregon because students are, quote, stuck in a system that isn't delivering the quality education they need to succeed. It is difficult to deliver quality education when the quality education model is underfunded by at least $2 billion and $20 billion since 1999. Please prioritize educating the PPS community about the need to advocate for their public schools. It is more important than anything else well, I can't say it's more important than anything else you're discussing tonight because you've discussed quite a few important things, but it's really important. And the K through 12 cycle means that parents in the know about funding leave the system, except for some Cleveland high school teachers. And new people enter all the time that have no understanding of the multi-generational lack of investment in our schools. Why are we in this perpetual state of begging for current and inadequate service levels? This is a choice, a matter of will, what we have all accepted. The reason I'm here tonight is to spread word that PPS parents have been organizing educational public school funding forums to support a growing effort across the state to end this 30-year tragedy that we have accepted as inevitable for our kids. My daughter helped me write that sentence. She's a Roosevelt High School student. I have seen some of you at these forums. I want to see all of you at the next forums, which are at Dunaway Elementary School on February 10th, and then I'll be in KD Apartment will be hosting one at Roosevelt High School on February 20th. Legislators will be present at these meetings to answer questions. And I'm also asking Superintendent Armstrong at tomorrow night's community budget meeting if you could inform our community about these forums. I have digital paper flyers with me here if anyone would like one. Thank you.
Can you say that again? Where it's going to be at and what time?
I'll give you a flyer, but February 10th is Dunaway Elementary School, and February 20th is at Roosevelt High School. And at Roosevelt, we'll have Senator Lou Frederick, Lisa Reynolds, Shannon Isidore, and Travis Nelson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Dr. Effie Greathouse, Dr. Rachel Rochester, and Miss Rebecca Schnenker, and who is virtual, and I'll be bringing in.
Dr. Effie Greathouse, Greathouse. I am a mom at Hayhurst Elementary and Robert Gray. I'm also an environmental scientist, and I run Safe Indoor Air for Oregon Schools. I'm really pleased that PPS is modernizing our schools. The 2,000 air purifiers are also critical to modernizing our schools. I want to take a moment to apologize to Dr. Armstrong. You inherited a problem. You did not know that the 2,600 air purifiers in storage were yet another betrayal of the community's trust. I wanted myself and a couple of our air quality moms and dads to meet with you in the first month you generously took on this tough and time-intensive job. And if we had, maybe we wouldn't have be in this position of PPS parents' shock and dismay at your and the board's well-intended effort to help LA kids. But during your first couple months, I didn't have the time to figure out how do you get a meeting with the superintendent, because SAFO's folks and I were busy trying to reach some of our elementary and middle school principals. Here's an example of the kind of information that we bring when we meet with a principal. This is the airflow report for Roosevelt High School. And one of the classrooms, classroom 86, is typical of classrooms in the building, and it only gets 1.2 air changes per hour if no air purifier is running in the room. We're advocating for a minimum of 6 air changes per hour. So with one air purifier in that room running at its reasonable noise level, you only get 2.4 air changes per hour. At 2.4 air changes per hour, it takes 58 minutes to clear out 90% of the kids' respiratory aerosols. So with only the one air purifier in room 86, it takes over an hour to each and every sneeze, viruses that the kids are coming down with, keep lingering and hanging in the air for over an hour. If we add the second air purifier, We bring the room up to 4.1 air changes per hour, so we don't even reach our goal, but it still helps clean the air faster and does it quietly. With 2 units in room 86, sneezes and coughs will clear out by 90% in 34 minutes instead of nearly an hour. I want to wrap up with sharing that our fall push was trying to get our custom packets to teachers, and in the packet we include our handout on the best settings for their IntelliPure air purifiers. And this handout talks about why it's critical to, our handouts talk about why it's critical to their students' health and safety that they run the IntelliPure but turn the DFS button off. This over here is an IntelliPure. Do any of you know what the DFS button on the IntelliPure is and does? Our third commenter is going to be educating you about that after Dr. Rochester speaks. Thank you.
Dr. Rachel Rochester, Rochester. I am a mom at Llewellyn Elementary School, go Stars, an enthusiastic classroom volunteer, and an Oregon educator myself. I'm also a scholar who examines climate chaos and scientific literacy. Like Dr. Greathouse, I am really pleased that we are rebuilding and upgrading the remaining high schools. At the same time, I'm troubled that Oregon is currently in the highest outbreak of whooping cough we've had in 50 years. This notice went out to Lincoln High School families a week and a half ago. This notice informs Lincoln families that on Monday, January 13th, the school started getting cases of whooping cough. So on the very same day Lincoln was facing a reportable outbreak, the board, with good intentions, authorized Dr. Armstrong to give away 2,000 air cleaners that are supposed to be in our classrooms, scrubbing the air of infectious aerosols students and staff breathe, cough, and sneeze out into the classroom air, including infectious aerosols containing the bacteria that causes whooping cough. It is particularly difficult to reconcile Lincoln having to report this airborne disease on the same day of this vote, because Lincoln is a key school in ongoing misrepresentation of facts on this issue. Superintendent Armstrong and the board were misled when this poor plan was presented to Dr. Armstrong, leading her to falsely state, quote, "All of our schools, all of our classrooms have air purifiers at the moment." This is simply not true. Lincoln has not had any air purifiers for nearly 2 years, not a first unit, let alone a second one. All of Lincoln's air purifiers were removed in spring of 2023. For modern schools, for safe schools, we need to filter the air in our classrooms, in our libraries, band rooms, in our schools' main offices, cafeterias, kitchens, health centers. The list goes on. The units you authorized to donate are supposed to be on and running year-round in all of our schools, even in our modernized schools. Because the ventilation requirements in our building codes are not health-based, and because we can't meet our climate crisis response policy goals by moving all the air that needs cleaning through the whole HVAC system, air purifiers in the classroom are the most energy-efficient way to get effective particle filtration. My heart goes out to the people in LA. I have friends and family there. But their root classroom air problem is the same as our root classroom air problem. The problem is school boards and leadership who have been misled into thinking that adequately filtering kids' classroom air is only supposed to happen when there is a wildfire emergency. We are asking you, Dr. Armstrong, to maintain the pause on any more air purifiers going down to LA and to work collaboratively with us on a responsible, evidence-based air purifier plan that advances your goals for PPS. These air cleaners are important for our new goals in the district. Cleaning air right in the classroom is critical to student focus and improves reading and math test scores. The entire history of air quality and air cleaners in the district is riddled with falsehoods and broken trust. And getting all of these air purifiers into our schools as promised so that enough filtration is happening is essential for safe, clean air. Thank you.
I have a question, because I've been seeing this issue come up, and it's been disturbing for me. So I understand, the issue that we have here as an Oregonian for 45 years. So when you make the claim that our air is the same as LA right now, I get different scenarios because they have it's an urban fire, not just a wildfire like we have here. So urban fires, we have a lot more type of chemicals with sheetrock, asbestos, all that stuff. So it's interesting that you're saying that our air is the same here as it is down there in their time of need right now. I've talked with folks down there, I've talked to air specialists down there, and it's hard for me to believe that.
We didn't.
But
She didn't state that.
hold on. And then the other thing is that, are you saying because we decide to help kids down there who have zero air filtration going on right now, that we should make sure that our schools have 2 before we decide to send 1 for their schools down there?
We have a third commenter. It would be great if you would hear from our third commenter.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Rebecca Shanker, she, her. Thank you, board members and superintendent. I'm actually calling in today from Los Angeles as a mother to 2 LAUSD students and an aunt to my 2 nieces at Llewellyn Elementary. I've also worked on large-scale air quality pollution reduction projects for the last 20 years. My family is very grateful and we are safe from the fires, certainly heavily impacted by toxic air. I've also been working with Dr. Greathouse for the last several years as one of 14,000 members of the National Indoor Safe Air Group, which brings leading experts together on air quality specifically to support schools. I'm devastated by the tragedy in my city, and I deeply appreciate the generosity of Portland Public Schools. It's a compassionate gesture and it reflects your commitment to kids' health even beyond your community. However, I'm also concerned that this is not actually the best approach to equitable and safe air for all. Frankly, I'm concerned that the donation was made from a place of ignorance about the fundamental air pollution science of the IntelliPure air filters which were sent to our schools. I understand so far that 500 of the IntelliPure units have been sent to our district. Dr. Greathouse asked you if you know what the DFS button is on the IntelliPure air filters, and this is a really, really critical item because that DFS button is not on all air filters. It is on the IntelliPure units, and it is a hidden ionizer. And what an ionizer is it is a chemical attempt to clean the air, which actually ends up creating even greater chemical reactions and more toxic indoor air. We obviously have challenges in wildfire conditions, as you so eloquently stated, that are severe and challenging and include asbestos and benzene and all sorts of other chemicals, which are going to interact with this hidden ionizer in every single classroom where they are placed. So this is an especially unwelcome problem for kids in LA that the DFS button defaults to on. To avoid uncontrolled chemical reactions, teachers actually have to know that the ionization is a problem. They have to know that the DFS button is an ionizer, and they have to actively turn off that ionizer each and every morning that they use that unit. Locally, you have dedicated parents like Dr. Greathouse who have been educating PPS schools on how to safely use these IntelliPure units and to rely on the main air filter to avoid the risks from the ionization of the DFS button. Unfortunately, LAUSD won't have that benefit. We won't know where these are placed. Our parents won't know how to go into the schools to protect our kids and teachers and staff from even more toxic air. We understand that these donations were made without a full understanding of the situation of the air quality science and without the input of this sort of educational response. We understand that you did it from a place of deep compassion, and thank you for that. We implore you to stop these additional shipments and use this opportunity to collaborate on the best air quality solutions for Portland and Los Angeles. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. With that concludes our public comment. Thank you for showing up. If there's any thing you would like to follow up with the board, sorry, I think I was supposed to read something.
I would. I'd love a chance to talk to you, Gary, about some of the issues here and the needs in our district.
Okay.
I mean, we have these information about the ionization and
Okay, thank you.
How can we ask them questions? Shall we?
No, I want to, just because we're kind of behind schedule, if there's stuff you want to follow up with, please feel free to contact our senior board manager, Roseanne Powell. You may also discuss at your own time. It is democracy still, so do what you can, at least for now. Right now we have scheduled comments from our union partners. I see President Bonilla's in the audience. I don't know if I saw anyone else. I don't know if you have. Great. Welcome.
All right, hello, good evening. Happy Black History Month. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak before the board as a union partner. As always, I want to start with kudos. Kudos to our superintendent, Dr. Armstrong, for trying something different with our budget process. This year, the budget conversations have begun much earlier than usual and included a community listening session that's going to happen tomorrow, as well as an hour-long educator question and answer session where more details around the potential cuts were shared. She also had senior cabinet help answer those questions. And today I received an email from Employee and Labor Relations with the recording of the session, the new budget website, and a budget engagement feedback form. So although we have lots of concerns about the impacts and the depth of the cuts, we are happy to be part of the conversation early enough to actually impact these decisions. This is a big step in building or helping build trust with our educators, so thank you. Also, kudos to this board for reaffirming this 2017 board resolution that exclaims our support for Black and Brown communities impacted by the racist executive orders to send ICE agents into sensitive locations like our schools. The school board made it clear that PPS will not be intimidated and we will protect our community. Lastly, a kudos to our PPS LGBTQ2SIA+ program manager for their collaborative approach to the message that went out to all PPS educators with resources and protocols to support our trans and gender expansive students and community members against the increased hate and discrimination caused by the executive orders and chaos being sown in the federal government. So PAT is not new to using our contract and union to protect and support our marginalized communities. We have longstanding language that enshrines the right to a respectful working environment, free of, quote, verbal abuse or other behavior that demeans, threatens, humiliates, or intimidates others in the workplace. We have parents and educators who are working together in different school communities to support families if and when ICE enters their neighborhoods. We have educators engaging in learning around trans joy and trans justice, where we hosted a panel to kick off a book from Rethinking Schools, which was edited by one of our own PPS educators. We also know that this federal administration is threatening to eliminate the Department of Education, which helps enforce and investigate violations of the Individuals with Disability Act. They've threatened to cut title funds, which directly support the budgets of our schools impacted by poverty. We know this administration will use this funding as leverage to demand compliance with their unconstitutional acts. So my question is, what does trans safety mean to y'all? And what is that cost? Because we will be asked to make difficult choices at the risk of losing close to 10% of our budget from federal funding. Does that mean more to this body than supporting and loving our trans and LGBTQ+ students in our schools? I believe not, I hope not. And just as we spoke up against the discrimination and harm done by this administration to our immigrant community, we must also speak up about the impacts to our trans and gender nonconforming siblings. These communities don't exist in a vacuum, and the intersections are where the deepest impacts tend to occur. We must also look to the state and advocate for a proactive response to threats of or the actual loss of title funding, including funding for Title IX, which was built to protect against all gender or sex-based harm, and discrimination. We must be expansive in our definition of community and not allow this harm to build. So by acknowledging and planning active steps, such as training for educators and staff in coalition with parents and community organizations, we can reduce the harm experienced by our LGBTQ2SIA+ community at our schools. So I'm coming here to ask that we continue to collaborate, we continue to speak up, and that we make sure that our families and our communities hear that we are in support and collaborating to support all of our communities that are being marginalized right now, and that we take concrete and proactive steps, including conversations with the governor and with legislature for them to have proactive plans, because we need to be ready and not just react. Because the pain is coming, and the only solution to that pain is community. The only way that we get through these hard times is not by isolation, it's by collaboration. So thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, President Bonilla, for the strong words. Always welcome your input here. Next up, we have the resolution to appoint representatives to the 2024-25 Parent Advisory Committee, distribution of donations for staffing. Both Director Hollins and Vice Chair DePass were part of the selection committee, which reviewed and selected this first group of advisory committee members. Before I ask them to share a bit more about the process of the pool of applicants they had to choose, is there anything you would like to add, Dr. Armstrong?
Absolutely. I just want to publicly thank Robin Ferrone, our Director of Strategic Partnerships, who has taken the lead on recruiting for these positions. So thank you.
Oh yeah, I'll speak to a little bit to the process of selecting. We had, I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me. We had quite a few more applicants than we had spots to sit on this committee. We carefully considered the members based on geography, whether or not they had children in the system, and where they were in their educational journey. And I believe we met twice. And I'll let you finish up our process.
Okay. We selected some, that's it. No. We would make sure we was intentional too. We made sure that we had a representation based on race as well. I know that's a dirty word right now, but when we be intentional, you just have to be intentional and damn whatever other folks that are opposed to that say as or do. And I applaud Director DePass for helping lead us down that road as well. We're in some different times right now, and I think it's going to take those folks to be intentional and not worry about, what the way we're going or the way it seems like we're going, to still make sure that we have representation in spaces and places like these. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 7043, resolution to appoint representatives to the 2024-25 Parent Advisory Committee, distribution of donations for staffing?
So moved.
Second.
Director DePass moves. Director Brim Edwards seconds. Any board discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to say a few comments. So the establishment of this committee came out of a fundamental change in PPS policy around fundraising and around moving to a district-wide foundation where we're all in it together, or we all rise together. And I really want to thank the individuals who are on that first this first wave of the committee, because you're going to be foundational, hopefully, of the success as we start out together versus individual school communities looking out for their own school community. So I really want to appreciate the parents who've stepped up and volunteered to serve on this. I know it's going to be foundational to not only a district-wide fundraising, but also to district-wide advocacy, which really, I think, withered during the years in which individual school fundraising became the focus, instead of how do we use our collective voices all together in advocating for our kids. So thanks for the parents, and also to Director Hollins and Director DePass, who I'm sure picked a great group of leaders to lead us into this new era.
And we also want to make sure we thank the students. We have 2 student reps as well. We'll actually be voting members. So we working on that, JJ. We gonna get you. But I want to thank the students as well, because this is all for them. And so while we are making these decisions, it's great to have students on there that actually has another voice to add to those, and enthusiasm, because they a lot more active than we are. So.
Great, thank you. Ms. Bradshaw, is there any public comment?
No.
All right. The board will now vote on Resolution 7043, resolution to appoint representatives to the 2024-25 Parent Advisory Committee. Distribution of donations for staffing. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Any abstentions? Student Representative Kasavi, indicate your vote.
Strong yes.
Strong yes. Thank you. Resolution 7043 is approved by a vote of 7-0, with Student Representative Kasavi unofficially voting yes. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is a draft of the 2025-26 calendar school year. Dr. Armstrong, Superintendent Armstrong, would you like to introduce this item?
Absolutely. As staff comes forward, we just want to acknowledge how important it is to have a calendar out early and have an accurate one, so that families and relatives can plan vacation and childcare and all those other important things. Before you today, I have 2 members of the team to present the 25-26 school year calendar. Team?
Want to start? Okay. Good evening, Board of Directors, Chair Wong, Vice Chair DePass, Superintendent Armstrong. We are here tonight and are pleased to share a draft calendar for the 25-26 school year. The goal always is to strike a balance as best we can with the constraints that we have in terms of some of our contractual constraints, and also balancing the need for predictability for families and consistency, as well as opportunities to provide robust professional learning for our educators, as well as planning. So last year, as part of the negotiation process, there were some adjustments that were made to the requirements in our contract. And we also, coming through that process, made some adjustments to the school day. So we ended up with slightly longer school days that allowed us to make some adjustments and provide some targeted time for educators to both plan grading days, as well as grading days and planning days. We've made a distinction. So I just want to make sure that that's in there, that we designated those clearly. There are other pieces in the calendar that we have worked on, and the result is that we actually increased instructional time across the system with these adjustments last year. This year's, what you have before you for the 25-26 school year mirrors this year's calendar and some of the rhythms that are in it currently. There's not dramatic changes, and so that's what we brought forward to you. Just a couple of highlights that were in the board memo. We used, as I said, we used this current year's calendar as a guide. We received some feedback from educators, other staff members. We shared the calendar with our union partners, and as well as got some feedback from families. So the original calendar that was posted on January 21st, is that right? but it came down. So that there was a calendar, the original calendar. We took that input and we've made some small adjustments to it, but the structure of it is essentially the same. What you'll see is that K-5 and K-8s in middle schools have 10 60-minute staff meetings that are distributed throughout the year. We have identified 8 early release times for professional learning. Some of that time this year, for example, has supported a cohort of elementary schools with the science of reading as an example of how some of that time is being used. We have the high school structure has stayed essentially the same. We made modest adjustments to the school day. So they have 30 high schools have 30 staff meetings. At the end of the first 3 quarters, there's a planning day and a grading day that is designated as 2 separate days. We tried to balance those on Mondays, Tuesdays, Fridays, Mondays, Thursday, Fridays, so that we could rotate through employees that work half-time, et cetera, et cetera. In addition, I think that we, as we mentioned, we talked about the early releases. Particularly from principals, we've heard very strong reactions to having dedicated time over a period within, an 8-hour workday to do professional learning with their staff has made a significant difference. We also recognize that early releases can be challenging for families and want to give people as much time and lead time to plan for that moving forward, which is why we have the calendar before you. Essentially, we try to balance the semesters as much as we can, but I'm going to be honest, we also try to have slightly longer first semester to support our seniors and also to mitigate some potential weather that may occur. So that we may not have experienced last year, so I'm going to knock on wood about tonight. And so there are some slight adjustments to the calendar. We try to be balanced. We try to balance the quarters. They're not perfectly balanced. I think that we added snow days. There are 3 designated snow days that are in the calendar. One is, again, we usually use President's Day. Then we add in the other 2 at the end of the year. I think the other part to just notice is that, again, we've earmarked or set aside CSI, TSI days as well, and that is, they are marked in the calendar. One is at the start of the year and one is in March, similar to what we've done this current year. Was that? Okay, I'm pausing. I'm going to continue. I think the other piece is that we are starting before Labor Day, as we did this year. We do align the end of the school year with our plans for graduations and our commitments. This year we're moving to PSU and away from Providence Park. We've aligned that again with where we are with in the coming school year. So we try to align that as much as possible. We also look at the higher education calendars, and so you'll see that our spring break aligns with U of O, OSU, PSUs as well to support families that may have students both in college and also at PPS. Ironically, this year, we did hear that there was some benefit that Halloween falls on a planning day, so there was some educators were happy to have Halloween not be in school necessarily. And I think that ultimately the goal is to have predictability as best we can in the calendar. So we're not anticipating any major adjustments. It meets our obligatory minutes, instructional minutes. It meets the contractual requirements that we've laid out. We have a checklist that's about 3 pages long that we've cross-referenced. And then again, we sought feedback from our union employees. I'm trying to see if there's any other. I think I misspoke. I think there are 4 snow days that are marked on the calendar. I said less than that, but I think there's 3 at the end of the year and there's 1 on President's Day. Yeah. So we did post the calendar for some community feedback and also did some outreach. I think there's trade-offs about early releases and sort of how families plan for that and what does that mean. So we are cognizant of that, and we're hopeful that giving people lead time will help with planning. I think the other thing that came over a number of years is that there was a request to have on the calendar when some major religious holidays were, so that we could help educators avoid evening events and that sort of thing, and just be cognizant of that. So we've done that again this year. You'll find that on the calendar. I'll pause there for a minute. And I think one other additional piece that we did lay out is the calendar does include conferences as part of it, which is a Division 22 requirement for, it's one of the things that you take into consideration when you adopt this calendar, is that you're acknowledging that we're going to count some days, 2 days, and essentially it's 3 school days of conferences as instructional time as part of this process. I'm going to pause there for a second. I said a lot very quickly. I've spent a lot of time in the calendar, and I will pause and see if you guys have questions, and let Ms. Rowe also.
I just have a comment.
Sure.
It sounds like there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of considerations, contract, whatever. And I think you answered my question about the religious holidays, and I haven't looked at the calendar and lined it up with the best calendar in town, which is the Planned Parenthood Equity and Inclusion Calendar. I mean, it has everything on it that anyone of culture or gender would want to celebrate or recognize. And that was my question. It sounds like that was taken under consideration and included in this calendar. I was just looking for the icon for it.
There's actually a policy that the board drafted that required that, and then the calendar followed that, because for about 2 decades we had, just year after year, parents whose families celebrated, not the majority, maybe either religion or cultures, holidays, found that back to school nights and a variety of things were being scheduled on what are really significant family days. So we passed a policy, and then it got carried over into the calendar. And I will say not everything's in there, because there's a constitutional provision that PPS has to provide by, of like how we decide what gets included. And so not everything's on there, but hopefully we'll have fewer conflicts between families who have a cultural or religious celebration that's important to their family that conflicts with an important school event. It's the square, the outline of the square is what
the bold square.
is that stands for.
Yeah, I just like to say I noticed that on, I think it was late openings, for some reason I can't find the calendar. I'm sure I printed it out, can't find it. I remember we were asked by some parent, please have those late openings at least on the same day so we can make it work, and you've done that. And I noticed that right away and thought, thank you, with all the other things you had to do. So I appreciate it. And somebody else will too, I'm sure.
And I appreciate your institutional knowledge about that. That's really great to have some context.
Well, if you don't want to hear the same complaints year over year, it's like taking action.
I only have one suggestion. I was wondering if you ever thought about making a decoder ring for the symbols. Because I spent more time decoding the symbols than I did reading the calendar. I did have one question though. Well, yeah, when I was like 6, I think I got one in a cereal box back in the day. One question about those late start ones. I see a lot of effort. So, was there some obstacles for having it, say, like on the same like Wednesday of the month?
Yeah.
Okay.
We tried. We heard loud and clear. Can you get some consistency? Can it be the second or third of a month? So there were a number of challenges. So we tried to become more consistent. So there was an original draft that was much less consistent. There's a second version that has an asterisk that I hope people have, and if not, we'll make sure that you guys have it. That puts the more regularly. We don't quite get there for the regular parts of late openings. Trying to balance where it is relative to the end of a quarter, where it is relative to holidays. So if we tried not to proceed a late opening on the week prior to a longer break, like winter break, so that was an adjustment we made from the current calendar. I think the other part that, with the late openings, again, we're trying to get greater predictability to them, and we heard that, so we went back through and tried to rearrange it and get closer. So we think we've gotten closer. Anytime we do that, then there's trade-offs. So I think that the other piece is around for our K-5, K-8 middle school that have only 10 staff meetings, trying not to have them on a short week, a 4-day week. Like, we're trying to do as much as we could. So we built in more consistency. I'm sure that we will receive some feedback that we're not quite there, but you know, we continue to strive to get there as close as we can.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for getting the calendar out early. For those who don't know, I'm an elementary school parent and have been really engaged at my elementary school. And one thing that I flagged to Roseanne, and I think she flagged to all of you, was the memo sort of makes it sound like it's new that it's a 4-day ramp up. So I just wanted to flag that again, that if you put adding a day would provide or has provided all students in the memo, and not to wordsmith, but I think it would be so helpful so people don't read it and get alarmed like I did that we're adding a day. And then I also just wanted to flag, and the reason it struck me and I did get concerned is that kindergarten ramp up is really important for the kids and for the families, but it is also a surprise to a lot of people. People that register late, people who aren't as proactive in getting engaged in their school communities or have a first-time kindergartner. And you don't know what that week is going to look like until after teachers get back from the summer break. And so for working families, it's a real challenge. And so I don't know if it's your job or someone else's to help with communicating that, or also maybe thinking about ways that could be smoother, like we're going to have all the A through L kids there on this day and the N through Z kids on the second day. Instead, they do like a half and half sort of thing, and it just depends at each school how they do it. I think there could be some things that we could do to really help those families, because kindergartners, they need full childcare, you know, like you need, and so you need to take we ended up having to take vacation days in order to be with our students because there's no summer camps, and by the time that week comes, you're usually out of any daycare situation. So I just kind of wanted to raise the flag for the kindergarten families out there that I think we could do. I think we could do better in helping to kind of educate folks so they can get prepared for that. I also I think I might have said it and might have forgotten because I got tied up in my kindergarten rant, but I also just wanted to say how important it is, I think, that you're doing this work early and how grateful I am for the careful consideration. And also, if you don't know it, there's a PPS parent who plugs all of it into a Google Calendar that you can subscribe to so that you have it all in your Google Calendar, which is really awesome. So if you haven't found that trick yet, I can send you the URL, but I think that's really cool that somebody does that work and makes it a lot easier for all of us. Although I love your beautiful grid, and my decoder ring works perfectly for it. But thank you for all the work, and know that you have partners out there doing cool work like that with your work. Thanks.
Thank you. I think if I could just add one last thing, and I just want to reiterate that when we hold the CSI, TSI days, we put them on the calendar as placeholders until the budget is adopted. So I just wanted that our ability to do that is based on the budgeting process. So some of the things that are on the calendar, like we're trying to just say, here's where they would be, and then there'll be things that happen throughout the spring that will make what those days look like final.
Well, I just want to thank you and all of the staff for your hard work in this process. I was wondering if you could share more how student engagement looked like in this.
For the student engagement for the calendar, I think that we did not probably do enough. So as I'm saying this, I think that I would have to go back and see if we ended up. Well, you can tell me. I don't think we took it to the district student council other than to have it on the website. So I don't believe that we did go back out and offer direct feedback to students. So I appreciate that.
Do you still have the calendar committee, or is that not a thing anymore?
The calendar
Or are
committee.
you the calendar committee?
The calendar committee has. We're harking back to Rudy Rudolph probably on that. So I think we need to. The goal is to do it even earlier. So like we last year was coming out of negotiations, but we need to go back to calendar committee. So I appreciate that feedback as well because it gives us more of a runway.
Well, I asked that question because I think it's a place where a student can be involved, but also I know back when Rudy was doing the calendar committee that when we came out of the instructional days complaint, that parents got on the committee, which really also then drove an earlier start to the school year because lots of parents realized that their kids getting instructional days earlier in the year made a difference for later in the year. I always think it's great to have parents and students involved because they'll just bring up different things than maybe school staff. I did have a question that you're well prepared to answer, I know.
Okay.
If you take the days that are on the calendar, tell us where we are in terms of meeting the state's minimal instructional hour requirements specifically at the high school level. I'm sure at the elementary and middle school we're fine.
Yep. So thank you. Coming out of negotiations last year, we did increase instructional time. So we once you vote on the calendar, we are above the thresholds at each of the grade levels at kindergarten, at middle and high. So the threshold at kindergarten is for 900 hours. Last year, the current year that we're in, we planned for about 930 hours around there, so we're significantly above. Similarly, for 1 through 5 and 6 through 8, the minimum hours are 900. We are well above that. We will, once we finalize bell schedules and whatnot, I will do the actual calculations, but we're significantly above that as well. Same for high schools. The concern is always seniors with their 966, and we are significantly above that. Right now, like back of the envelope calculation, we're closer to like 990 hours for seniors, which gives us some room in case there's inclement weather and whatnot, it's always the challenge is that there's less space for seniors to make that up prior to graduation.
And there's still a requirement that students actually be scheduled.
Yep.
So the high school students, so that they'll have a full school day and therefore all the instructional hours.
Yes. Yep. And then there's slight adjustments that we make based on we model the calendar, but there's slight adjustments year to year. So whether it's passing time or various other slight adjustments to bell schedules people ask for, and once we have the calendar set, then we'll go through and we'll run all those calculations on the back end so that we have the baseline ready to go.
And then my last question is some districts choose to count what I would consider non-instructional time as instructional time. They're allowed to by statute. This calendar, though, doesn't do that in order to meet the instructional
That's
hours.
correct. The only thing that's embedded in this calendar are conferences. That is the only piece that
Which was decided, I think, between the parents and staff at the original
Yes.
time that was
Yep. So that's the only
similar to instructional time.
That's right. So it's of the Division 22 pieces that you vote on in the fall. We track the only thing that we include in that is the 3 days of conferences. So there's no hours for professional learning. We're not counting recess. That sort of thing is not in the calendar as it is, and we're above the instructional time.
I guess my last question, since we're not voting on it tonight, but it's a future item, if people wanted to comment, how would they do that?
I believe that there's a spot for public comment that is still up on it's on the Office of School Performance website, and then also if there's comment that comes into the board, if there's public comment or questions, then we can respond there as well. We welcome further board questions if there are some, and JJ, I will connect with you about student voice as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? It's our chance to almost get back on schedule. Thank you for all your hard work. This is wonderful. Just kind of a reminder, this calendar will be on the February 18th agenda for a vote. Thank you, too.
Thank you.
All right, what have you all been waiting for? Next up, we have the high school construction costs, including analysis and report done by Cornerstone Group. Earlier this fall, the board requested a high-level comparison of the costs associated with our 5 schools. With 5 schools now, all ours. Beaverton High School, Lincoln, Jefferson, Ida B. Wells High, and Cleveland, with 2 main objectives. Identify the difference in project costs and to identify potential areas for cost savings. Superintendent Armstrong, would you like to introduce us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So tonight, school board, we're hoping to get some initial direction in the areas that were identified in the Cornerstone report on reductions. And so I have the team here to walk you through some cost comparison, just an overall report, but we are looking for some initial direction and feedback on next steps. Thank you. I'm going to have Chief Dan introduce his team.
Good evening, everyone. Oh yeah, it's working. Good to see everyone. So you stole a little bit of my thunder, but we're going to go through like an intro real quick, and then we're going to get into questions and then get into some prompts for, as Superintendent Armstrong notes, some feedback that would be helpful for staff. So as you know, back in November, the project teams for Cleveland, Jefferson, Wells were directed to pause work on the project designs in order to complete a cost analysis. The objective for tonight is to have a discussion on what information the board requires to provide, so we can provide direction to staff to resume work. Today specifically, we're seeking direction from the board regarding cost-saving options outlined in the high school cost comparison report. A committee meeting is being scheduled soon, I understand potentially very soon, where we will bring project-specific cost reduction options to the board. Therefore, we want to ensure that the information that we provide aligns with the board's preferences and reflects the details that you want to see in that cost analysis. So, as I mentioned, we'll run through a couple of things really quick. We have some project team members here to help answer questions. Next to me, I have Stormy Shanks, who's the Senior Director of the Office of School Modernization. Plus, we have Steve Efros and Eric Girding, both Senior Project Managers working on modernization projects. And I believe we have Keisha Locklear, or we might have Keisha Locklear, who's another Senior Project Manager joining virtually. And we got some staff in the back, too, if we need to call them up. So I will go quickly. I was told to go quick. I'll go quick. Framing. The modernization projects appear, this is kind of like what we're here, appear high when compared to other projects, and PBS aims to bring those costs closer into alignment. In order to reduce costs, it's important to understand cost drivers. So in simple terms, project costs are informed by third-party cost estimates. Third-party cost estimates align with project designs, and project designs are informed by design inputs. Each one informs the latter, with the design inputs really being the driver for the project designs and therefore the project costs. So for the sake of ease and time, we can break the design inputs into 2 primary categories. One we'll call guiding documents, and the other stakeholder feedback. A lot of this is in the memo. And if we look at the guiding documents, an oversimplification, but think of these as the materials that are handed to the design teams when we start a new modernization project. And they include a number of documents, but the big ones that you think about more often are PPS's education specifications, I think we're all familiar with, PPS's facility standards that define materials and performance specifications, and then district policy and directives that provide direction on project design and project implementation. The second component to inputs is stakeholder feedback. PPS's stakeholder engagement process for modernization is robust, to say the least. And it's even noted in PPS's education specifications that modernizations of PPS high schools will be accomplished with robust stakeholder engagement process that will consult and inform stakeholders throughout the design process. So we do that. Each project will engage in hundreds of stakeholder engagements, and there are a variety of forums before planning and design is complete. Board members will be familiar with many of them, such as DAG meetings and steering committee meetings and community workshops. However, it's also worth noting that the teams also coordinate many dozens of non-public stakeholder feedback sessions with subject matter experts, such as performing arts staff, CTE staff, media specialists, SPED, athletics, school counselors, maintenance, IT, transportation, community partners, and many, many more. So when we talk about stakeholders, I think the point is like there is a lot of stakeholders, and it's a really robust process that goes on for a very long period of time, years, essentially, that inform these projects. So getting to the point, these design inputs really culminate in each project's comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is when these guiding documents, the stakeholder feedback, unique school characteristics and programs combine into one cohesive plan that is the project scope, the project schedule, the project budget. And this comprehensive plan is approved by the board, which begins the formal design phases. And as we know, the Jefferson Cleveland Wells projects all have approved comprehensive plans. So that's just some framing. We might reference back to that if there's questions about how we got here. So I think that can be helpful. If there's no questions about that, we'll jump into quick highlights about the high school comparison report, which was already noted, had two primary objectives, comparing the various projects, the 5 projects, and identifying features that help explain the cost differences in the projects. And then objective 2, identifying opportunities for potential cost savings that help support this cost analysis that we're in the middle of right now. So regarding that first objective, identifying the cost differences, when you look at the report, there's a lots in there, and there's a staff memo that tries to tease it out a little bit, but there's really no one factor that explains why there are cost differences. Really, there's lots of them, and they add up. And so escalation is a big one, for example. The size of the buildings is a big one. There are different spaces, some more costly spaces in some schools than others, like our health centers, kitchens, for example, athletic improvements, like those are expensive, and so some projects have those spaces, others do not. PPS also has unique design requirements, such as all electric infrastructure and energy efficiency goals, which have upfront costs, and then each project has unique site characteristics. Sometimes that costs more, sometimes that it can be more efficient. So there's a lot of data in the report, and it can be confusing, and we could easily spend weeks just parsing out all the different potential differences and why something is one thing and why it's different cost somewhere else. So what I think might be helpful is to talk through maybe a simplified version of that I think is helpful, at least for me, and hopefully it'll be helpful for you. In the report on page 4, there's a table called Costs Escalated for Comparison. It's the second table that's in there. And this table aims to estimate the cost of construction escalation for each project, to normalize them per assumed escalation to provide more of an apples to apples comparison. And when escalated, the Lincoln project is about 15% more expensive than the Benson project. And these projects are similar in lots of ways. For example, they're roughly the same size. So the total size between Lincoln and, did I say Benson?
Yes.
The B throws me off every time. Beaverton High School. Sorry, I'll probably do it again. I've been doing it all day. Between Lincoln and Beaverton, Lincoln's about 15% more. They're both roughly the same size, so size isn't a big driver. They're both CMGC delivery methods, so that isn't a driver. However, the report notes a number of differences that add cost to Lincoln and help explain that 15% difference. For example, premium cost spaces such as a kitchen and servery, Beaverton already has this in place, so they're not constructing that, so it's not part of their cost. I think it's about 25 or 30,000 square feet, so it's pretty significant, and expensive spaces. The 1.5% green energy improvements, PPS's equity and contracting goals, site logistics, and Lincoln's also in the, Eric, the name of the overlay that Lincoln is in?
Well, it's the Downtown Design Commission to review and design overlay. So there are more requirements for materials.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So some of that's not in the report, but just thought that worth noting. So when all these factors are taken into account, the Beaverton project and the Lincoln project have similar project costs, not the same, but that helps explain why there's that 15% delta. Further, when the report compares Lincoln now to the 3 high schools that, the current projects, those are about 30 to 35% cost difference. Again, when escalation's in there to try and level those out. And that's not perfect, but it's getting close. Those projects are also similar in many ways. They're both informed by PPS's ed specs and facility standards. They all use the CMGC process. They all follow PPS's equity and contracting goals. So none of those are going to be drivers for why the costs are different. But where the report notes there are differences includes PPS's newly adopted climate policy, which requires all electric infrastructure, has energy goals, etc. The total building size is different, and then athletic improvements are significantly different. Lincoln, because of its small footprint, didn't have a lot of athletic improvements, whereas the 3 current projects have significant funds dedicated to that. So when all those factors taken into account, the projects are closer in cost, not exactly, but that helps explain. Getting to a precise number would be either impossible or take infinity. So to me, that's kind of helpful to do those comparisons. If you have any questions on that, but I'll just keep running through, and then we'll get to questions.
I'm just going to say, Dan, Lincoln, though, has money for the athletic facilities in the bond. So while it wasn't in the cost comparison, the 2025 bond includes money for the finished build out.
The 2025 bond, yes, includes funds for improvements off-site at West Sylvan that would
right, but they're for Lincoln.
Lincoln's use. Yes, yeah. So further adding to that point, I guess, right? Yeah. Okay. The second objective, I'm almost done in the report, is looking at potential cost savings and recommendations. So not all those differences between the projects are opportunities for reductions. So for example, escalation is a big factor, but there isn't much that PPS can do to influence future cost escalation. Also a quick note, people are very scared about tariffs and what those are going to do, but that's a topic for a different day. And so the report has 15 recommendations that can really fall into 3 categories. So hopefully this makes the report seem a little simpler too. Those 3 categories are factors that PPS has minimal influence over, therefore there isn't likely cost savings. Factors that may have some cost savings, such as the pre-construction services and general conditions, what the teams are already looking at. So we plan on bringing information about those forward when we meet again. But as Cornerstone notes, there's probably not real significant savings there. The third category is areas of potential material savings. So certainly we can talk about lots of little things that could have lots of little savings, but really what we're hoping here tonight is these big drivers, we'll call them big rocks, like where those potential savings are. What is the board's interest in looking at cost reduction options in those categories? And I'll name those categories as the building area, so square footage, the climate policy, construction requirements, PPS's equity in contracting policy requirements, and then PPS's, oops, wrong one. I got lost. Oh, wrong page. And another one. Oh, it's the cost premium spaces, such as like health centers, the teen parent centers, and athletic improvements. In the health center and teen parent centers, I think those are good ones to get some feedback on. Those aren't big spaces, so I don't think they're huge. We'll call that a medium rock, but it'd be good to get some feedback on those as well. So let me just frame what we're hoping to hear as far as direction for us, and then you can pepper us with questions. So those bigger areas for opportunity are building square footage. I'll just do one of them. So the primary opportunities for reducing square footage are going to be reducing overall student capacity, reducing non-required ed spec spaces such as choir rooms or CTE programs, or reducing larger than ed spec spaces such as things like theaters. So what we're interested in, like those 3 in particular, what is the board's interest in those? Are those non-starters, or is that something that the board would like to look at? And then if so, we can bring back some information. And I'll go to the other ones too, but I'll stop there. I think I've been talking too much.
So
Go
ahead. So I have a question, because it seems like we do this again the same way. So the board gives direction, you guys go out, do your stuff based on that. Has there been a recommendation of projects that staff has built based on the report already? Because what I don't want to do is I don't want us to start talking about, well, what we do or don't want to do, and then staff has a different recommendation that could be more feasible, because we're not the subject matter experts, you guys are. So I guess I would like to see what your guys' recommendations would be based on the report that has been done.
Sure. So the report it gives some areas where the district can potentially save costs. So square footage, for example. The square footage largely is what it is based upon those inputs that went into the process. So what we have now are designs and cost estimates that are the output of the process. So another way to frame the question is, if we can reduce square footage, and let's go to student capacity, well, that is based upon the education specifications. So is the district interested in doing something different, changing those inputs effectively to produce a different output? Staff doesn't have a recommendation of what that student capacity is on an individual project, but if the board's interest is savings, that is an area that we could look at.
So I guess we already know the board interest in saving. That's why we have the whole report. That's why we're here right now, right? So you guys know our interest is in savings. I guess what I don't want to do is I don't want us to have individual board members saying, oh, we want this, or we can do without that, we can do without this. I want your guys' recommendation based on that you guys know we want savings. What is our options? What is our possibilities to come back and tell us that? Because for me, that would be better. So then I can say, okay, this is what their recommendation is based on this report, knowing that our priority is saving. And then we can kind of look at, okay, this is the trade-off for this, or this is the trade-off for that. It just seems like it would be premature just to give our say, because, nobody's going to want to say, well, we don't want to get rid of, the health center, or nobody's going to want to say, oh, we want to bring the square footage down from 320 to 300,000 square foot. Nobody's going to want to give that information. So based on what you guys already know about us wanting to save, based on what we kind of look at as far as the other costs of schools, whether it's here or nationwide, I would just feel more comfortable, as you guys are being the experts on this, to give us a recommendation what you guys think based on knowing our priorities are savings and what the report says.
Patty?
Gary, I kind of think they need from us, because nobody wants to do anything, but we have to. And what I have a question about square footage. So can we cut square footage with still keeping the ed specs? And just the rooms are a little smaller? Or what? Because I certainly don't want to not have the same ed specs. If we can maybe, crimp that in a little bit, is that possible? Or do you have to do away with everything we want in the ed specs if we cut square footage? And another question I have, it came up, like, a basement is really expensive. Is it possible to do Cleveland without a basement? So just personally, I'd rather go that way than have you come up with something and we say, oh, we don't like it.
Well, I appreciate the question, and I definitely want them to answer. I do appreciate Dan having the leads of certain projects here, and I think the team would be prepared to say, I appreciate the question about, in their expertise, like thinking of timelines, thinking of meeting some of the goals. Many of these members have been sitting with the design groups and know the interests and wish of the community. I think a recommendation is just that, and I feel like the team probably is and should be prepared to say what they're recommending, which would, I think, answer Gary's question. And so I wanted to see if we could just see if there were some things that they want to offer up based on their time in the work, as it's been going on for quite some time. They've invested a lot of hours.
So I have a question just about process. I hope there's not going to be a limit on this discussion, because I have a lot of questions, and as I think other board members do as well, and I just want to make sure that we're not going to be like Okay, we're at 40 minutes. We're moving on to the next agenda item because I think this is a super important discussion that should have happened before the referral. So I just want to make sure if we go into hearing some recommendations, that we're also going to have time to go through questions that board members have and talk about a process by which we're going to land something more definitive for the community. So that would just be my question.
Yes, absolutely. And so maybe what I'm recommending is that they respond to Director Holland's question and then to Director Sullivan's.
So we're not prepared for recommendations. What we were hoping to hear is what are the board's values, because we don't want to bring forward options that are, you're the decision makers, the non-starters. And as we talked about, the design inputs are those documents such as the ed specs, such as board policy and stakeholder feedback. Those are the values of PPS. That reflects PPS's values, that process, those inputs. And then the output is what we have. And this board approved the comprehensive plans for all of those projects. That includes the current scope, the current design, the current budget. So if I guess we could use, if you want a recommendation, I think we'd even need more guidance on that. If it was, we want to get to a number. What's the most efficient way to get to a number? Or if there's something else, I mean, we can take guesses at what the board will find acceptable in the end, but if we have some direction on the front end, that'll make it, I think, a more efficient process.
How about if I try answering your question? Do you want me to try answering and you can see what,
yes, please.
what I need to be able to answer your question, and maybe that will help. So you ask about square footage, overall student capacity, ed specs spaces. Okay, so what I would need to know is in the current 3 designs, what spaces go above and beyond the current ed specs? Because that tells me, I mean, that'll allow me to think about what that is, because otherwise it's just theoretical.
I can say that's easy because it's already in the comprehensive plans.
Okay, so to better understand that by school, so we can see that, then
maybe how much those changes would save in the total cost along the way.
Right. I mean, so I have this all in a series of questions. Then let's take the 2 examples that are outlined in the report, the Teen Parent Center and the Health Center. So I have a series of questions because currently Ida B. Wells doesn't have a health center. Cleveland, the question is, would they have a health center 3 years later? Would the county still be funding that, or would we go to, like Lincoln has, which is a nurse's station, which is very different from a comprehensive health center. So if I knew the answers to those questions about the health centers, that would help me answer like yes or no. The teen parent program, I understand that there's, because we've been, as former county chair, Deborah Kafori noted, we've been fairly successful at reducing teen parents. And so do we need one of the teen parent center in every high school? It's my understanding at many of the high schools that have teen parent centers that most of the children, the vast majority of them aren't children of students at that school. So I guess I'd have a utilization question. So I'd want to know those things. Then in terms of like the overall capacity, I'd want to know what the current school enrollment for each of those are. And I'd also like us to look at what happened when we opened the other high schools. So I was here in 2017 when we were at the time Madison, and the question, there was a big push to make it 1,400, just like Roosevelt. It's a good thing we didn't, because at the time it only had 900 students, and now it's one of our larger high schools. So I'd want to have that before because I think both Ida B. Wells and Cleveland for the last 10 years have been over 1,500, so I don't see why they would be reduced. But again, that's the type of information I would want before I'd say, yes, go do that. But I think those are spaces that we should definitely, from my perspective, talk about.
So if I can,
is that helpful?
Yes, and if I can do a quick recap before I lose it. So what I hear is reducing. So I'll start at the bottom. Looking at the health centers, the teen parent centers, and looking at reducing, I'll just say, back to ed spec minimum, are all viable options, and reducing student capacity is also something, is not a non-starter. That is something you want information on.
It's just okay, I'm just saying, I'm only speaking for myself. I'm sure everybody's going to say. And I would want more information to know whether I'd want like the next step. But like part of that would be informed by what information I got. It'd be like, keep proceeding. Because those seem like, again, my recollection with Lincoln is, for example, they traded the health center space for more CTE space. And also, I understand we built out space for a health center at Grant, and there's, it's not financially viable for providers unless it's the county, and there's a significant number of students who would could be qualified for services, but I don't even know that if we have a health center whether students could we'd actually be able to have a provider that would provide services. So those are things that I would want to know.
Okay. And can I ask generally if other board members agree? I don't know the most efficient way.
Director Split?
Yeah, thank you. I was hoping to be able to have a conversation about our values when we're talking about trade-offs. So we've gotten some mail about the climate policy and how that fits with what we're looking at, our equity and contracting goals, and whether or not to veer from ed specs or not. So I'm hoping that, I know you're seeking direction right now, I'm hoping that we can provide some so you can come back. It sounds like it might be an iterative, quick moving, hopefully, conversation, but it sounds like you guys need something from us to be able to come back with us. I also wanted to say, I agree with Director Brim Edwards. I would also like to see those spaces, those extra spaces we're talking about, the health centers and the teen parent centers, but not the performing arts centers, because those are also, I don't know if those are auxiliary spaces or if those are included in ed specs, but we've heard from the community that those spaces are dear to them and to me. On the climate, I work in climate, and I believe that we have a climate crisis, and I also am curious about building to LEED gold standards without getting a certification. I know that the certification is an incremental cost, and it's not that much, but it's still something when we're talking about cutting millions of dollars from these projects. I think that we should have a conversation about mass timber versus steel and concrete. That's another place that we have jurisdiction over. Square footage, I would love to see what the trade-offs are in terms of square footage and student capacity, but I don't think that we should base it on current enrollment, because if we do, then again Jefferson suffers because Jefferson has a really low enrollment. So if we're basing any decisions based on current enrollment, Jefferson is harmed. So I'd like us to not use current enrollment. I'd rather use population projections to be a little bit more accurate in terms of who will be in the schools in the future. I also just wanted to note in the report that Jefferson has an extremely high cost of doing business, and I've looked at this several times and I don't understand why. Jefferson has such an incredible delta from the mean of these construction costs, particularly in lines in the table. I think it's on page 4. Pages aren't numbered. On page 3, let's see if I can reduce this a bit. The lines 18 through 22 just indicate, Beaverton and Lincoln are, 23.3 million and 34.9 million, and Jefferson comes in at a whopping 89.6 for the same services, pre-construction fee, contractor, the general conditions, etc. So I'm not sure why it is. What is it about Jefferson that is so at least twice as much, if not more than that, than everyone else? And I'll stop and let others weigh in. I don't want to. I want to just say about the climate specs. I also believe that we should still build all electric because we're looking at costs over the long run, and all electric is where it's at.
So I have a question because I know that one of our initial ask is making sure that we are able to hear your thoughts and feedback. And I hear the questions and they're all so important. And I just want to make sure that we're going to get to a place where, to Director Brim-Edwards' point, we're able to move forward on a solid list of recommendations. And I fear that we could probably spend the next hour or two answering some of the questions or even going around and hearing from all the individuals about those items that are important and not get to like number one on the list, building size. You know, is it I mean, I will just say, you know, my recommendation is that we pursue a 300,000 square foot size high school that would save 24 million across 3 projects. And so, you know, as an example, the question would be, is there board support for that? Does that meet your interest and guidance? And kind of going through some of these on, you know, things that are possible. While, you know, of course, the hope was to be able to save upwards of 70, 80 million through this report and all of these features. That's just not going to happen. So what are some small wins that we can get out of this so that we can get these project teams back up and going and we don't lose time or worse, delay any opening timelines that are before members. So I just want to make sure that this structure or the way in which we're receiving or giving information, inputs or outputs, is going to get us to a place of being able to leave here with your initial guidance or reactions to the items that we have listed.
Yeah, Director Slate.
Christy she was waiting to.
Sorry, I was going to basically say something pretty similar to what you were saying. Something I want to put out, I think a few of you have heard this from me already. I feel a real sense of urgency to figure this out, to not over-engineer the conversation, the process, in order to get to all the answers we all might want. But I think it's important that we be able to ask you questions and know that you'll get back to us with that information so that we can make decisions in that timely fashion. I hope that you don't tonight answer those questions. I hope you watch the video later and get back to us with answers to make best use of our time and your time and to give us the most educated answers you can using more than just like papers that might be in front of you right this second. I wanted to say something really similar. I want those in the audience to know, anybody who's listening, Zone 1 includes Ida B. Wells. And so this is, I want to make sure you all realize that that's my school, where my, you know, whatever, however you want to put it to consider, as I'm saying this, knowing that there's going to be people in my community that might not love it, but I really think that looking at the size is important. I think that question of how the ed specs match up to the size, that might help us to sell that change, but I think that's $24 million, and I absolutely agree with you that I think that's a place that we need to look. I think of looking at Lincoln, and I look at that school, it's a world-class high school. It's a world-class high school in a city. Like, we should be not necessarily trying to add bells, whistles, or square footage to what we have just done there, and we can all agree. Seems like a pretty awesome space. So I wanted to put that out there, and if people are concerned, like, oh, you're going to take this or that, I think really it's, no, we're going to build these high schools to roughly the same size and not have others that are bigger than the ones that we've just done and can all agree look pretty great. I also just wanted to put out there that I think that the climate policy is relatively new and it was student-led. And I think, to me, that's really important that we adhere to that. I was a little disappointed to get some emails today that were suggesting that be where we look to make the sacrifices. I think our students would not want that, and we can ask them to confirm, and maybe JJ can help find that out from your cohort at the student district student council, thank you. But I'm guessing that's the case, that they would not want to make the sacrifices there. But I do think there's places like Director DePass mentioned. I looked at the climate policy and it doesn't say it has to be LEED Gold. There's a list of like EG with some different possibilities. So maybe one question I have that I'd love to hear back, and I mentioned this the other day, is how can we comply with that policy? But does it have to be the LEED Gold, or is there another one that's listed there or that's out there that we think does the trick? By the way, having a smaller school is also more efficient and utilizes less energy, so I think that's also in line with the climate policy. So I just kind of wanted to get out there. You said you wanted some guidance from us. That's at least 2 of us, and I'm seeing some nodding heads that are saying on the climate stuff, like, that's going to be a little tougher sell for me and maybe for some others as well. In addition, I'm really not interested in making changes to the equity policies regarding the workforce. So if you want to hear from us, quickly said, those are the things that I would say to me I'm not as interested in, but those, what did you call them? Cost premium spaces and area make a lot of sense to look at, as well as like the basement consideration. And with that, I'm happy to kind of get off, let things move forward given time, but I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation and happy to be the one that's like, okay, let's make some decisions, let's get this done. I think it's so important that we settle this and start getting out to the doors, getting out, and maybe we're not allowed to say this, Liz is probably like, don't say that. But just to say that, we need to have community support for the bond. Is that better? And that they need information.
Elected officials can speak to the campaign all you want. It's staff that have the restrictions.
Okay. Thank you so much. But really, we need that information to go out there and sell it, because I think anybody watching and in agreement, anything that's stopping us from going out and doing the work and actually getting it done, and anything that continues to jeopardize the media messaging or anything out there on the bond, that's not good for us. And so I just want to put it out there, let's get this settled, let's land this ship and get moving on getting it taken care of and not let any uncertainty continue to be a risk.
Well, just to go on that riff, right now, I think the bond is in jeopardy if we don't quickly resolve this issue. I mean, it's frankly dead in the water if we don't answer the question to taxpayers, what it is they're buying. Our taxpayers and community is very supportive, has been very supportive of us, but I don't think we can say, you're going to get everything, and by the way, we're going to cut $100 million out of schools. So getting it resolved as soon as possible, and I think we also should do it in a way that's informed by information. So I'm with you, Christy. Director Split. Of moving fast. Again, this should have happened before the January 7th referral. So that was a false deadline. We should have had that done, but it's not too late. So I'm going to also weigh in on and I could maybe get to 300,000 square feet if I knew what's in it, because I feel really strongly there was a promise before the referral that we weren't going to cut out ed spec spaces and academic and student spaces. So I'd want to make sure we could do it, but I think it's worth looking at, so I'm for the ed spec spaces. I'm going to speak to the climate pieces because I think those are the other big bucket. I don't know if the next category.
Director Bidden-Edwards, we still have 3 board members who haven't had a chance to speak, so I want to hear from them first. Okay. Director Green.
Thank you all so much for allowing us to have this conversation. I'm not in any way, shape, form, or fashion okay with us changing our ed specs for what we said that we were going to give our students now. I believe that I don't believe that we should be building the school smaller because that's looking at right now and it's not thinking about where we're going. When you start thinking about Cleveland and Ida B. Wells and Jefferson, there may be some things that we can take off the table, but the size of the what we're building for, as far as the number of students, I don't believe that should be one of them. If we're talking about taking away square footage because of land mass, then my question would be, can we go upwards? How can we go higher and provide them the same things? As far as the nursing, the teen parents, I could be okay with moving that off the table. And if we had a plan if we had a plan for how we were going to address it from an area perspective. I wouldn't be okay with taking it off the table if we don't have a plan for how we're going to be intentional about addressing the issues that way. The basement, I think I could get with the no basement, as long as we can assure our community that whatever it was that was in that basement, we're going to replace by putting on the ground floor or another floor somewhere else. So if we can take away the basement and yet still provide them whatever service was in the basement, then I can be okay with that. I'm not okay with the idea in any shape, form, or fashion of us taking away any of the arts from any of our schools. I'm not okay with, it's just a lot. And I believe I was also expecting to hear from Dan and his team about what they would suggest, based on, you guys have been going at this for years now. You've been dealing with this for years now. And so I was expecting you guys to be able to come to the table with, based on the temperature and where things are at and understanding what it is we're trying to do, these would be our recommendations on how we can get there, because you also understand timelines, you also understand the scope of the works and the different projects and what it's going to take to get involved. So I'm a little disappointed that you're not prepared to have that, to provide that level of input. As far as you mentioned a couple times that they all use the CMGC process, but what the report didn't mention, or at least I didn't see it, was that process with the same company, or was that meaning that in those other projects from Beaverton and other places around the country, that the CM and GC were both held by the same company? Because what I'm trying to understand is, in all of this, as we're looking at our numbers, does this take into consideration the overages that we've had in some of our schools? And so if it doesn't take that into account, then what is the actual number considering the overages? I'd also like to speak to how, again, this is a lot. So I kind of agree with Julia about, Director Brim Edwards, around this isn't something that we need to hurry up and get through this so that we don't go over time, because I've been asking about this for a long time. And so to try to but anyway, I digress. Understanding that CMGC process, where was Beaverton, did they use that where it was split? And then how are we managing the overages? Is the overages taken into account? Is the reality that when we start looking at some of the things that our schools and our school communities are benefiting from, Portland Public Schools didn't even pay for it. So when you start thinking about some of the work that might have been done at Cleveland with their track and field and some of the different places, although we're grateful that they've done it, we're not taking into consideration the amount of money, the amount of time, the amount of energy that the community went in to pay for something that PPS is benefiting from, but PPS didn't actually have a real input in. Roosevelt was the same way with their track. The community had to raise money for their track and to get that going, because before it was ever being put into bonds, some of these schools were going out trying to make it happen for themselves because they recognized that those school communities needed it. Is that something that's being weighed in? And something that's being taken into consideration, something that's being at least talked about or acknowledged, so that we can give some level of a nod to say, listen, we see what you guys have done, and this is how we're going to ensure moving forward that we continue the work that's being put in. I just believe that simply saying, you tell me what to do, I think that lets you off the hook for actually being the person that's over all of this, and being the person that's supposed to be able to have taken the information that we're given and have a vision for what all of our schools can look like, and then come back to the table with some recommendations, and then allow us to do like a battle royal over those things. And instead, it to me, it seems like taking the easy way out. Well, it's not me. I don't want to be the one to do it. I don't, and so I'm.
Director Herman, can you finish up?
No, stop.
Please.
Stop. Don't do that. Don't do that.
We're trying to just answer
Don't,
the size.
Director Wong, don't do that. I've been talking about this for a minute, and now we want to get here, and you want to tell me, don't do that. Don't do that. So, I would like to hear directly from our operations team on what it is that they've looked at, some of the things that they've recommended, or that they will be recommended, and how they can see us moving forward before this evening is over. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Green. Director Sullivan?
Well, yeah, I guess I'm back to what I said before. They could present us with what they think is best, and then we just say we don't like it. So it seems to me they're going at it with a much more knowledge if they know how what the board will accept. So, and I would love to get information about how the health center and teen parent centers that we have built are being used before making a decision. As I said about the basements, I personally could go with steel and concrete versus mass timber, but I would like to keep the electric climate goal. And, as you said, general conditions is a small thing. And we could look at, somebody mentioned, I think Julia, you said look at square footage, but make sure it doesn't affect the overall plan. So I agree with you that you want input from us, and that's my input. There you go.
So this is the issue, right? Because this is the same process we did before, as far as giving input to them and then coming back and trying to figure out stuff. So my thing is, I would love to do something different.
Yeah, but we didn't have this input.
We don't have the information. We don't have all the information because everybody's asking other questions, so we don't have information to really make those decisions. And I'm gonna just say this: I sent a list of questions a week ago, and from this staff I haven't heard anything from. So when they say, "Well, we ask your questions so we can give directions," if we're not getting our questions answered from this staff to be able to make those decisions or make those recommendations or guidance, how are we supposed to do that? I sent questions a week ago. I didn't hear anything. Still haven't heard anything about the questions that I asked. Why haven't those been answered?
Well,
no, I want to hear an answer.
So on a different topic, I believe there were questions that were submitted.
They were cornerstone questions about the report. I sent these a week ago.
I apologize, I don't recall receiving those. This
is the problem. Mm-hmm. So when you ask us, well, give us direction, and I send questions and they don't get answered, how am I supposed to give you direction if I'm not getting my questions answered?
I think, Director Hollins, I think there's some disagreement in terms of kind of the purpose of what we're doing here. The staff is asking for direction, trying to figure out kind of what Director Split said, seeing where our values lie, Director DePass as well, and you, Director Hollins, they're the experts, seeing where our values lie in terms of where the leeway can be in terms of trying to find cost savings. Now,
so if I ask questions, so I can give that, and they don't answer, how am I going to give that?
My question to you then is, what is the outcome you're looking for with having these questions answered?
So, for instance, some of my questions was, can you explain the equity contracting, how could that reduce savings? If they're asking me for directions on that now, and I ask a question on how that's going to affect it, how am I supposed to answer that question?
It's the same issue. It's the same issue I raised. It's like, I think we're being asked to give input. I think we want to provide input and then also hear your recommendations, but we also need to otherwise we're giving uninformed feedback, which is not the right thing and it's not going to move us forward.
Hold on. I want Student Representative Kasabian, I want to respond to that, but I also want to give some space to our student representative. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think this is a really big decision we're making, and it really impacts our community and students, and I strongly believe with my colleagues we need more information on this. I think it's essential to make this big decision, but I think if I were to choose some things that are non-negotiables for me. I wouldn't be in support of reducing any performing arts or basing the school size on enrollment.
Thank you. So I want to back up just a little bit. And first of all, say thank you to the staff and people producing this Cornerstone report. I mean, this is above and beyond what, frankly, what I've ever seen before in terms of a district doing its due diligence to figure out where we can save money, and also we're spending, how to spend our public dollars well. We're not wasting it. So thank you for, I mean, this is incredible work. It's a lot, and I just want to say thank you. Well, I haven't gone yet. Hold on.
This wasn't district led. This was board led. This report was board led. The district didn't come and say, hold on. None of the staff came and said, you know what, or at least in public, these schools are a little bit too expensive. We want to look into it deeper. That was a board decision.
May I just remind everybody why we're even talking about cost? Because we can't pick money off trees, and we have a limited resource in the funds we have, and we also want to spend it responsibly, and we also want to respond to what we heard during the teachers' strike, and that's that many of the schools in our district are need help. They need HVAC help, and they need improvements to the roofs and mechanical systems. And so I don't want to blast the staff. I know this is hard work, and you're trying to hear from us so we can be values driven, and I thought that we were going to talk about our values and you guys would come up, the staff would come up with a list of things that we had control over. There's some things, escalation and inflation, that we have no control over. Square footage, the extent to which we follow the climate policy, those things we have control over. But the reason we're doing it is because we have lots of schools in our district that need help. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't even be here tonight. So we're trying to do as much as we can, responsibly be good fiscal stewards of the public's trust and funds.
Thank you. I want to give my values, and then hear from Director Sullivan to finish her values as well, and then we're going to talk about how to move on. So just really quick, I have some questions, and I just really want to clarify a couple of things, just so like when the public watches, they're not freaking out. Because, you know, in Greek mythology, there's this creature called Hydra, right? It's got 7 heads, right? Just like we got 7 heads here. Well, it's a monster. So I'm sorry. Thank you for dealing with this. It's considered a monster. So Lincoln High School is built for just under 300,000 square feet, right? Beaverton is built for under 300,000 square feet. And currently the plan for Cleveland, Jefferson, Ida B. Wells is about averaging about 320,000 square feet. Now Lincoln was built for 1,700, which is our ed spec, for 300,000, right? And so it seems to me that we can still be building for our ed spec, targeting 300,000. Now I also want to just reiterate what Director Splitt said. Smaller buildings are more efficient. It also means that we don't have to do trade-offs in some other areas. Now, personally, my kid is probably going to be going to Cleveland, so I'm very invested in Cleveland and its success in a beautiful building. So just to lay this out there, this is something very personal to me. But if we're talking about if we reduce some of the square foot, and that means we can keep these beautiful big CET spaces, right? I mean, this is a trade-off I would definitely take. A couple other things I also want to talk about. I am also very adamant about Jefferson being a full, beautiful, well-enrolled high school, just like everyone else, right? Jefferson deserves its moment. It's been waiting, and so much historical things have happened to it that has been unfair, I think. And I remember a PSU study that came out, not too long, population study, that if we enrolled all our high schools equally, right, even including all the new high schools, we wouldn't even be able to fill up our high schools to maybe about a little less than 1,200 each, right? And so here we're talking about, are we going to sacrifice, the trade-off is like 30 empty classrooms, or maybe build the rest of our classrooms nicer, right? Or bigger spaces, right? I mean, these are the trials we're talking. If we want to explore maybe building 20,000 less square feet, so it's just like Lincoln and our other high schools, and what we get from that is beautiful big rooms You know, I've taught in beautiful big rooms, I've taught in cramped rooms. It makes a difference. So I think these are kind of the trade-offs I would love to hear about. So in terms of value statement, I think is worthwhile exploring a square footage reduction. I think that the trade-offs are well, like there's really good trade-offs that we can get from that. I am also, in terms of climate, you know, whenever you burn any petroleum product, you're always going to get off-gassing of chemicals and things like that. And so in terms of just like, yeah, it may be up front, it may be a cost savings, but in the long run, we're talking about, you know, there's no number put on health. I mean, there is, but it's more difficult to get, but there's health cost savings from that. So I think value statement, I think sticking to our climate policy in terms of all electric, which means that well, even if we don't get LEED certification, there's still, you know, a lot of evidence of long-term savings. So maybe it's a little more expensive up front, but long-term, the hope is that we save more in maintenance, which is where we're struggling to try to get money, right? And so, right, and energy costs as well. And the future of natural gas is kind of up in the air right now. So, so I think that's where my values. I think I'm going to hear really quickly.
Can I make a statement really quickly? Yeah, thank you for that, Chair Wang. I think just to respect the time of the board and the staff, I think what I've heard really clearly is that we have some unanswered questions. And so my request is that we have some time to go and answer some of those questions. If there's any other questions that are held in this space with board members and student director, that we collect those questions, and that when we come back, based on some of the things we heard you all say about your values, we receive feedback from the questions that we send, the answers that we give back to you, we'll be prepared to come forth with a set of recommendations based on what we heard from your values and whatever reactions you have to our responses. I want to call out that we need some more time to answer the questions.
And we need to, I really appreciate that, and we need to continue the discussion tonight. So I've been cut off twice, and I will say I've been involved in 6 bonds in 30 years with PPS, in either leading them or on the board. And this is the bond that's had the least number of meetings, the least amount of public comment, the least information, no community stakeholder group. And so to continue to shut things down, and it's not staff's fault at all. I think there were only 3 to 4 board meetings, and then there was not a community stakeholder group set up. We need to have this discussion. We can't just keep shutting it down because the filing deadline is coming up, and the election is 3 months away. So I think we should just keep having a discussion. I think we should give us your other categories, and we should tell you what at least our top of mind thoughts, and then send the questions. But we got to keep moving this. But if we shut it down, like then we're going to the next topic, and then what? We're going to meet again next week. Then we've not given you any guidance. So I think we should give the rest of the top level guidance that we can. So I think we should get. You had 4 buckets or 3 buckets.
4.
And then I appreciate that, Director Burm-Edwards. I'm just wondering, like, from the guidance and the values, as I listen, there are some differences even just going around, and so being able to quantify that so that we're able to then come back with a strong recommendation based on what we heard. I want to make sure that we see a path forward, and I do agree, and I believe we plan to add some meetings so that we can have more time to discuss these things.
Thank you.
I just really wanted to collect questions and hear.
So I sent 34 questions yesterday, and I think based on that, I can give you my point of view. I want to give the climate piece though, because you asked about that. So maybe you'll start having almost a majority of the board. I was the chair of the Climate Policy Committee, as you know, and very much the community and students drove that policy. While the policy was being drafted, the Benson project went ahead with fossil fuel infrastructure, and so we knew we were building a 100-year school with fossil fuel infrastructure, so there's no way I would support this project not being electrified. So that would be just sort of a baseline, because that's putting a long-term, if we don't electrify, it's building infrastructure with fossil fuels that would be for another 25 years. And those are long-term carbon emissions that I think is just totally heading us in the wrong direction. However, there's a whole host of other sustainability standards, and what would be helpful for me is to hear from staff. Here's the cost and where we see the best return on investments, because maybe we want to make some trade-offs. I mean, homeowners do that all the time. It's like, I think I'm going to put insulation here, but I'm not going to do this other thing because it's more expensive and we get a lower trade-off. So that would be helpful, and like where we draw the line. I would distinguish something different between the sort of mass timber and steel and concrete. Choice is different from electrification, because that's a one-time into the input into the carbon into the project, but it's not a year-over-year carbon emission. So that's how I would, and I think there's a point where we like, okay, these are the ones that we could get some cost savings that have a lesser value. So I'd be interested in that list. Also, on the gold certification, we can build to what we think are the most important LEED standards, and we don't have to go get the certificates. It's not it's not a lot of money, but it also takes a bunch of time. And I think we can say these are built to LEED standards. If they are built to the main LEED standards, to me, that's more important than a piece of paper that somebody certified. So that's where I'd be.
It's actually a plaque. It's a plaque.
I have a couple from my time at Nike. And frankly, though, the wise decision is to know how to build to the standard, but you don't actually have to just keep getting the plaque, because you pay a lot of money for that. You spend a lot of time to get the plaque. So that's where I'd be on the sustainability pieces. And what were the two other things that you were looking for guidance from? And I have a bunch of questions that relating to some of those things.
Also noted in the report where there's the spaces that have cost to them, and we've already heard that the health center and the teen parent centers, you'd like more information on those, so those are on the table for more discussion. Athletics was another one. I haven't heard any comment. I kind of assume that that's a non-starter, but that's one we haven't heard any feedback on. And then the other one I think that you did not touch on, Director Brim-Edwards, was PBS's equity and contracting policy. We've heard a couple others say that that was a non-starter.
So I had to, I support our equitable contracting, but I'm interested in the same question that Director Hollins, and I have a question like it here, is like, what is that premium that we're paying for equitable contracting? So I don't understand why there's a premium for it. So getting a better understanding of that. Lessons learned from the previous one, and then on athletics, I don't think it would make. We have a whole separate part of the bond where we're actually making investments so that our high schools have equitable athletic facilities. So it doesn't make any sense to be making that pretty big investment on one side of the bond and then saying, oh, we're going to take it out of the, if you're a school that's being modernized, we're going to take it out. And now you're going to be the two, because at the same time we're catching everybody else up. Because I believe if we make those investments, every high school will have equitable and athletic facilities, which has not been the case in, I think, PPS's history.
Thank you. It sounds like you have way more than enough work to do too much work to do for. And just a reminder, we do have another meeting next week to answer even more questions. So whoever's interested may watch that if you have nothing better to do. Thank you for all your hard work, and I really appreciate all the thoughtfulness that went into this. It sounds like you have enough to work on. Okay, we're going to move on. I would like to give us
another question. I have another question.
One question, and we got to have another question.
Well, it's like we have to finish this discussion because we don't have.
So I just want to know,
not being
based
productive.
on, and this would be, well, I get it. Efficiency is not a advantage of ours here at PPS, and that's what we're working on. I just want to know from Dr. Armstrong, when we send in questions, what can it a reasonable time that we will get a response from?
It depends. Our goal, we know that this is a hot topic, and so we will expedite our responses. I will say that if there are some questions that are sent in that requires a little bit more research or some deep dive that will take more time from staff, then we will communicate that, hey, this is going to take us more than 48 hours to answer, so that you're not waiting, and we'll work to see or say that if it's going to take 3 days or 4 days because we have to maybe look at some external documents or things like that, then we'll communicate that. So I guess in short, just to summarize that, we'll answer within 48 hours, and if we're not able to, we will communicate with you the timeline that it's going to take to answer due to other points of information that we may need. Is that fair, team? Is that something we think we can meet?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just because there's multiple people involved, so we want to be reasonable.
So we send the questions to you, Dan?
Well, let's continue to send the questions to Roseanne. I mean, you can
to
certainly
Roseanne,
send
okay.
them. If you send them to Dan, please copy Roseanne, but it helps when we're able to track the questions coming in. And because we know that we have a meeting next week, we will work to be even sooner than that 48-hour turnaround, but at the very least 48 hours. So just continue to send them, copy Roseanne, send to Roseanne, but if you send them to other places, please copy Roseanne. It'll help us be more efficient.
Thank you. With that, let's take a 3-minute break. Thank you for all your hard work. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm good. Thank you.
Let's see
I always pause for chocolate.
Okay, I've got to go back.
Yay. All right. Next topic tonight is a presentation on the initial draft of our 2025-26 budget. Superintendent Armstrong, would you like to kick us off?
Absolutely. I know that we are calling up the slides, and I'm going to have the opportunity to walk through our initial draft of the 25-26 budget. And I have just a couple of slides that'll guide us. Sorry. As we queue up the slides. I also want to acknowledge that we have Chief Kafori and Chief Morrison at the podium. They will also share in this presentation. So this is the presentation that we prepared to walk through our budget. I'm not sure what the grayed out line is, but so we're here for 3 reasons. The first is rising costs. You know, inflation has resulted in higher cost of goods and services. We continue to invest in our employees, and the needs of our students continue to grow. Limited revenue. We know that the state is not funding the quality education model, and we are receiving less special revenue, including the end of the federal pandemic aid, and then declining enrollment. We are declining at a faster rate than our Oregon partner schools. All of these things are contributing to about a $40 million shortfall for the next biennium.
Next slide, please.
Okay, the clicking is, there we go. So, did we skip? Oh, well, we have I think we skipped a slide. Or did we delete? There we go. So it's been a multi-year process, as you know. Between 2022 and this year, we've been working on cost containment, where there's been some restrictions in hiring and putting limits on spending. Our current focus in this 25-26 year has been addressing the $40 million shortfall and planning in the future, our future outlook, is we will continue to look at reductions as we are in a decline in enrollment. And so just to visit the timeline really quickly before I turn it over to our CFO. So I think you all know that administration last year communicated a $72 million budget shortfall, and that was announced in about April. And so 30 million was reduced for this upcoming year, last year, which would mean that we had about 42 million to reduce this year for the upcoming school year. In November, we found out about a PERS increase that added to our deficit, which is where we had that $100 million number that we were focused on reducing. So we had that 32 million PERS increase. And then in December, we heard that the governor was recommending an increase to the current service level. And that increase to the current service level resulted in about $20 million coming in, so that our reduction was back to 40 million. And so that is currently where we're at for the biennium. I'm going to turn this over to CFO Morrison to talk a little bit more about reductions.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong, and thank you again, board, for having me. It's getting a little past my bedtime, so if it gets sketchy, please bear with me. We do have a little bit of background here, and we provided this to you in the packet because we are impacting schools. As you know, you've probably looked ahead and seen this list, and we want to give some context for that and the efforts that have been made thanks to prior leadership to kind of protect schools as long as we can in this process. So what this slide just kind of shows for 22-23, this was set in motion long ago, and we've done a great job staying on that path. In 23-24, we had central budgets, and sometimes those are staff and services that are distributed to the schools. Don't have the detail here for you tonight, but that total was 10 million in 23-24. And for the current year, you can see that it started to creep into schools a little bit more. We have our central office budgets again, taking almost $16 million reduction. And again, those are cumulative. So it's not a reset every year. That's an additional reduction, additional reductions. And coming into this year, we identified just over $14 million of impact to our students. And we're looking ahead. You guys have been informed. We've done some early work in the fall thanks to surveys. Dr. Franco conducted and compiled some information as we were coming into this, knowing that for 25-26, we are targeting $40 million worth of reductions. You can see that central budgets are up there again, just over 12 million, and the school-based budgets are impact at a larger proportion going into next year at almost $30 million. This is just a cumulative slide, talks about $67 million from the central office or central services over that 4-year period. Okay, did you want to speak to our why?
Let me speak to the why. Just really quickly, as you all know, we continue to ground in our guiding documents, whether it's the PPS Reimagine that holds our graduate profile and our educator essentials work, our Forward Together plan that is our strategic plan for racial equity, inclusion, and excellence, and then of course our Board of Education goals, which are our goals around eliminating opportunity and outcome gaps. And so, of course, our why, even with the reductions, is to continue to provide high quality education in all of our spaces and to make sure that we're providing as many supports as we're able to those who are closest to our students.
Thank you again, Dr. Armstrong. This is getting into the nitty gritty. We're talking earlier than we have in the past at this level of detail for budget reductions, because we want to have that opportunity for engagement and for input to inform the budget that we will bring to you later in the spring, the proposed budget. And you can see here listed out the central office reductions, just over $12 million. For the school level reductions, we have included a component for kind of a line item that identifies the amount of savings or reductions due to declining enrollment. So we kind of called those out a little bit separately. It's also referred to as truing up your staffing, and so that's focused primarily on licensed staff and support hours.
Question about the enrollment.
Certainly.
I sent this in, but it was something like 8 million. That if you took the enrollment reductions cumulatively, it looked like there was 1,900 students we lost over the 3 years, and it had like 8 million, I think 4, and then 8. I sent the question this afternoon. Is that so? This year, this coming year, it'd be this year's 8 million plus the 12 from before?
Cumulatively, yeah. But we're really looking at, and I did see your question, thank you very much. And I used our Department of Education estimates in order to identify those changes in numbers. So I think if you asked someone from our data team, they would provide slightly different numbers, but that would be a cumulative amount over time due solely to student enrollment reductions. That was not including student waiting.
So the 40 million, in some ways, it sounds like almost 20 million of it now would be because we've lost 1,900 students, not because of the teacher contract or any of those other things. I mean, is that like losing 1,900 students? Is that
There's not necessarily a through line to that.
But approximately, because we
yeah.
did get less dollars, whatever the formula is that gives per student.
Yeah, so if you go through these slides and you add up the enrollment reduction amounts total, that's just over $2 million. And so for us operationally, again, we're trying to kind of take the reduction in revenue and distribute it kind of through other services as well. So there's not a straight line there, Doctor or Director.
I'd be happy to be a doctor.
I know. There's a lot
Keep
of them
talking.
here tonight. So
I want to be a doctor.
okay. I did mention that my bedtime is 9, so it's getting a little silly here. So yeah, terrific questions, and we've gathered so much feedback already and have started making progress towards developing a plan, especially around the multiple school levels item that's just over $10 million, because those are supplemental staff. They're not necessarily classroom staff, but they provide a lot of services to our schools. And so working those through a formula and considering the needs of the students in each schools, that's a process we're going through now.
So this list that you have before you is just the beginning of our engagement timeline, because as you know, the board passed the budget timeline, which goes through June. So this is where we are right now, winter 2025. You can see that this is a busy week. We did an educator town hall last night. We're doing this public work session. We have a central office listening session tomorrow here at noon, and then tomorrow night we have a community budget forum virtual, and Thursday we are meeting with all the principals and building leaders again to give them the specifics and have a listening session with them about getting their feedback. We believe it is central to our beliefs that the principals are core to the ability to have our students receiving the high quality education they need. So as much feedback as we can get from them is important.
I'm curious on that. How are you going to get feedback from specific school communities who might be disproportionately impacted? And I think about the Southeast Guiding Coalition. There was a recommendation to take 10 FTE out, which was a 5-year promise from the district, which if we cut those, that would be basically, I think, violating a major commitment the district made to those schools. So I'm curious, is there going to be, where there's a disproportionate impact, especially those are usually communities that are not going to show up at a town hall necessarily. How are we going to solicit feedback from those groups, or even let them know that that is happening.
Definitely. We understand that people that turn out at these events aren't always the people who we need to hear. They are people we need to hear from, but we need to hear from other people as well. So we have a myriad of ways that we're trying to reach people through social media, through online forums, through principals being the conduit to their communities. As you heard earlier, there are 2 of many community engagement sessions that are scheduled. One at Dunaway, which the invitation went out to the entire Southeast community. There's one at Roosevelt scheduled. There will be more, and we will give you the dates for all of those. But that is something that we realize you have to be intentional about. You can't just sit back and wait for people to respond. And then you have before you the board adoption timeline, which you've seen before and voted on. So I think we can move past that one. And now, as Chief Morrison got to talk about all the negative things, I get to talk about the good stuff, which is how we are going to advocate in Salem. Director Split, thumbs up on that. How are we going to advocate in Salem? Because we know that they need to hear from us. We have legislative engagement, many sessions planned. Our superintendent has already met with the governor and has voiced her concerns about her thanks for the CSL increase, but her concerns for the other pieces that need to be added. As we've been talking about the external engagement, we have in this state advocacy toolkit, I'm tired too, which if you click on that, it takes you to a whole document that gives you templates and scripts. We're sending this out through principals to their school communities as well, so that parents can get involved and they can figure out who their elected officials are, which districts they're in, contact them directly, either through email, through phone call, through personal visits, and we're planning advocacy days in Salem, and as soon as we have those scheduled, we will get you that information as well. This is the legislative agenda, which you all have seen, and the reason you're seeing some of these slides that are maybe a little redundant to you is because this is basically the template that we're using for all of our community forums and public forums, modified depending on the audience, but this is what we show them. So we talk about what the advocacy agenda is that you all passed with, as you see, the quality education model is the #1 issue at the top, and then the other issues that we're also advocating for. We also are providing everyone with a budget, link to our budget feedback form, and we're compiling those, adding to the already long list of comments that we've received from people, parents, community members, school leaders, central office staff, you name it, everyone is writing in and giving us their feedback. And then, of course, we also are advocating that people contact you. So we want to hear from folks, right? That's our goal, is to get as much input as we can in this very important budget decision, and also ending everything with, we are not just sitting around and waiting for these cuts to happen. We are out there advocating every single day, explaining to our legislators, our elected officials, what these cuts are going to mean on the ground for a community that, as our CFO has said, has already been really hit very hard. How can we expect our students and our teachers to teach to the levels that they need to be, and students be, if we don't have the adequate funds to do that? Thank you.
That concludes our presentation. Do you have any questions or comments?
I have a couple questions, and this is kind of piggybacking on Director Bromellward's statement as far as getting out to communities that don't normally, able to come to virtual meetings or what have you. And I made a suggestion to our board. I don't know what's the board manager about doing some community town hall meetings, so we can talk about, people can have questions around the budget and things like that. I kind of got inspired by Senator Merkley's town hall, which was awesome. He had like 2,000 people or something like that there So I know I already made a recommendation for us to look at doing something like that as well. I just wanted so the rest of the board knows I have asked for that. As far as the budget goes, when we look at like our elementary schools and when I try to look at how we align with our board goals, especially with early literacy and an early literacy campaign we're doing, is there a way? Oh, guess we got to go, huh? It's time to go.
It's on Michelle's time.
we gotta go.
I think the audience is sleeping because that's what happens, right?
Oh, is there a way that we can maybe squeeze out a little bit more from, say, central office to put more or invest more in our elementary school area? And that's not a question you have to answer right now. That's just a question that I have.
And I will say that this is, that's why it says draft all over, because this is
Right.
really
And that's why I
the
would
beginnings.
ask,
And
yeah.
yes, nobody wants to make cuts, and we're.
Oh, no, I don't have a problem
yeah.
making cuts. Oh, yeah, no, I, as a business owner, we have to make those decisions all the time. I just want to see if we can make them somewhere else and then, look at our elementary school piece, especially with our early literacy programs that we're looking at and the importance of literacy right now. So but yeah, I don't have a problem making cuts.
Thank you.
So along that lines,
Director Splitt's been waiting for a little bit.
I just have a couple of things I wanted to say. I already committed to this board that I'm planning on visiting every middle school cluster, and when I go, I'm planning on hey, come talk to me about school funding and the bond. And so I just wanted to reiterate that that's a plan. I'm going to ask each of you when I'm in a middle school cluster that's in your catchment area if you would like to join me for that, and come prepared to share the advocacy toolkit, some other things resources that are out there to help families understand that it is not I am not okay making cuts. I realize we may have to, but personally, I think it's unacceptable that the state of Oregon continues to chronically underfund our schools, and I know all of us agree. And so we need families to be out there. We're going to get emails. I hope every time you get an email, you reply with that advocacy kit. Every time. Because we can't fix it. We cannot fix it. So we need to make sure people know the tools and how they can who actually can fix it. And I know resources are limited for the state government too. I don't want people blowing up my phone or anything, but it's a question of priorities. And to me, kids ought to be a high priority. And also, I just wanted to make sure to say to all of you, I'm planning on getting out there to help teach people how to engage effectively with the legislature. I hope you'll all join me. We'll all, I'm sure, be going down there and also trying to effectively engage with legislators as well. But I just really wanted to say thank you so much for coming and having that budget presentation paired with the need for advocacy. Honestly, anybody who is upset about cuts, and that includes people in this room, it includes principals, it includes teachers. It is not hard to send a message, and I am still hearing that legislators in Portland are not hearing enough. They're not hearing as much as we want. So we really need to make them feel uncomfortable. I'm sorry, all of my legislative friends in Portland, but they must feel uncomfortable continuing to allow cuts in our schools. So join me in making them uncomfortable, but also being very friendly and kind the whole time. And with that, I'm glad to move on and cede back to Director Broome-Edwards. Thank you.
Director Splitt, if there are things that the district office can do to support you and the board in that work as you're going out to meet with community, giving you information or attending whatever you need from us, we're willing.
Before Director Broome-Edwards goes, can I just say just a comment? And it's a meeting standard that I use at work. And it's called WAIT. It stands for why am I talking, or why am I not talking? I'm not directing that at anybody. I'm looking inward and saying, why am I not talking very much? I am not talking very much because it's not like I don't have a lot to say, but I feel like we need to cede to each other. We've all got something to say up here. I've hardly heard anything from Director Sullivan and Student Representative Kunsevi, and I miss your voices. It's a call for us to be a little bit more self-reflective about how we're showing up, and I'm aiming that at myself.
Thank you, Michelle. And the reason I don't have too much to say is because Christy pretty much said it, and you said it, and I think everybody knows I don't like making cuts. I don't really have to say that. So anyway, but thank you, Michelle, for letting me talk.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair DePass, for making some space. I'll share some of my questions and statements. So I know we do have local priorities, so I would love to see how we can better engage our local officials, because I think that would also be helpful. And just looking at the engagement, I just want to say thank you, staff and the superintendent, for putting this all together. It's amazing. But I would love to see more student-specific engagement, whether that's a virtual forum specifically for our students, because we will be most impacted in this decision. So I think our voices should be centered in this. And then my next statement or suggestion would be, I saw we had a press conference with tons of journalists and news people. I would love to see a press conference with our high school journalists. That way they can be civically engaged in this process, and that way we can share this information out more to our students. Thank you.
Fantastic idea. I may call on you to help with that press conference. And we do take student voice very seriously. In fact, one of the days that we're planning or working with student groups is the Student Day of Advocacy in Salem. I don't have the date in front of me, but I think it's March 3rd. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And then Superintendent Armstrong, do you want to talk a little bit about your group?
I just was going to say, and I think this is great because this came from a conversation that I had with Student Director Concevi. We had our meet and greet with the middle school Super SAC students, the Superintendent Student Advisory Council members, because we're waiting for the DAG members to join us. So we had a middle school meet and greet today, and we'll meet monthly for about 90 minutes. And so I talked about how we will be centering them in our decision making and engaging with them. And I mentioned the budget and some other things that are coming up. So I'm looking forward to the Super SAC officially kicking off with all members on March 11th.
They were ready to talk about policy changes, so watch out.
I love that Student Representative Kusavi was like, the kids were probably like looking up to you like, one day I might get to be a teenager, and how cool that must be.
Yep.
So I have some questions about the budget presentations, since we were supposed to have this 2 weeks ago and we're just having it now. About the budget slides, I'm totally supportive. I've spent 20 years in advocacy. I'm glad, Christy, some fresh energy coming in. That's great. But I have some questions about the budget presentation on slide 12, and I'm going to key off of the Director Holland's comments. So slide 12, I asked a question, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago about the central office reductions. And because there wasn't a page number, I think I wasn't able to clearly articulate exactly what I was looking for, because I got a cumulative response, but I resent the question today looking for individual line items, and I'd like to have this as, to me, it's hard for me to even tell the scale of cuts, like just say, because my question was, let's talk. It's 100,000, but out of what? Like, is it $1 million contract, or is it a 200? Like, are we cutting it in half, or are we cutting like 1/10? So for all of these, I'd like to better understand like the overall size of what it is, because it's not within any context. So if these are the central office cuts, I'd like to better understand. So that's a request to get that information. Does it make sense?
I do have an over and kind of a summary number for you. It's about 9%. That 8 million number that we were talking about, that's about 9% of the total non-personnel costs.
Yeah, I guess I'm not being clear yet. I'd like to know on each of these items. So take the Let's Talk contract. We say we're getting $100,000 in savings, but is that $1 million contract that we're getting at the $100,000 savings, or is it a $200,000 contract that we're whacking in half? This doesn't give me any scale for these individual items.
Okay, we do have those notes that I can provide for you. I was thinking more kind of globally, so we can get that line by line for you. I know some of those things are being reduced completely, some of them only partially, depending on recommendations from those budget holders.
Yeah, and I think that's important to know because, for example, if we're completely eliminating something, I think people need to know, like, hey, we're just not going to have that next year. So, like when people say, let's cut the central office, it's like, okay, we cut that, but like we're not going to have that next year. So, again, is it we just going to have reduced capabilities, or are we actually not going to have any capabilities? Like, I'll take another one: the central office travel, $200,000. Some people might think it's like, wow, you're cutting the whole budget, or is it a portion of it? I know it's not. So I'd like all those numbers just in context. I also, and this would be my standard question I would ask during the budget process, is all of our contracts that are like over $500,000. And so I'd like to see those, because those are not actual FTE, but they are contracted services, and we've had a proliferation of them, so I'd better understand that. We also got a email today about all the learning apps. There's something like 54 of them, and just understanding like all of the like, are we looking at sort of our tech and the software side of things of when we're making reductions? So if we have fewer students, do we need the same number of licenses? So those types of things. Also last year, I believe so we had the largest investment ever in curriculum in the 2020 bond, something like $53 million, but the district spent something like $75 million. And so the $20 million came out of general fund. And some of that I know has to, because it's a training, but some of it was it was more than we had budgeted. So I'd also be interested in, like, there's nothing there in that category, because I don't have any context in this category, and I know when you get into a multi-year cut scenario, when we get to the budget, and we might have to make cuts because Christy hasn't gotten every last penny from Salem, that we have scrutinized all the sort of non-school personnel, because what is being suggested are some pretty significant cuts, and especially the cuts that are beyond enrollment-based cuts. So that's what I'm going to need to see, and I'm going to go back to the Southeast Guiding Coalition, because I asked a question. I also got the last 4 years, and I look at the list. So this was definitely a commitment the district made for 5 years to those schools, and there's some of the lowest income schools, most diverse schools that were heavily impacted. Harrison Park, Marysville, Lane, Lent, Whitman, Vestal, and we'd be totally breaking our promise to those schools that we were going to provide some stabilization for 5 years by taking that out. So I wouldn't be supportive of that, and I'll just note that Dunaway was I think one of the only few schools in Southeast that wasn't impacted by the Southeast Guiding Coalition boundary changes and program closures, and I think if the district's going to propose cutting this, those communities need to be engaged, and they're not going to come to a meeting here or in Dunaway. They're going to go to a meeting at their school community, and there need to be translators and people to explain like what's happening and why they're, Harrison Park is losing, a number of different supports, which was one of the main reasons why we did the Southeast Guiding Coalition work. So I've just got to speak up for them. But I have a sequencing question. So generally in February or March, the staffing goes out, and I'm curious when that's happening, because that's 85% of the budget.
I'm sorry, you wanted to hear the human resource timeline?
So while we don't get in the proposed budget until April, actually a lot of the staffing decisions get made in February or March when the staffing gets sent out, and I'm wondering when we should be getting close to when it goes out, and to understand what the staffing criteria you're using, because as soon as that goes out, like, we'll start to hear from people. So
Yeah.
it'd be good to get the staffing manual and to know when that's happening.
That'll be the third week of February.
Okay, so it's coming up.
It's coming up. Yeah.
And will staff commit to providing the staffing manual and so the guidance that goes out? That's what we usually get from Dr. Adams.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I don't know if we have a date. Let me see, is Chief Reese in the back that has a date on when we typically get that?
Well, no.
A date that they can expect that?
February 25th. February 25th, says Chief Reese.
And so, for example, the 69, the reduction of the 69, that category, the group, and then the kindergarten EAs, that will flow out at that time?
It will be. I will say that we spent a chunk of time today reviewing the feedback that we received at the Educator Town Hall and made some adjustments. And we know that over the next couple of days, we'll hear more feedback. We'll make some more adjustments. And then at that point, we'll say that the superintendent's proposed budget will be ready to move forward through the HR, human resource timeline process, which will then get us to putting it before you all as a recommended budget for you all to weigh in on. I mean, ideally, and I hear your question, I mean, ideally, we would have the processing a lot sooner, but because of those constraints, as you.
It's always awkward
Yeah,
sequencing
yeah.
because of what we have to do with the schools. They need to get the staff to get set up and everything, but it doesn't really work with the budget process, so just asking for visibility at that point in time.
Well, your point is brilliant, and I appreciate it, and that's one of the reasons why we started our engagement so early, because our motto is early and often, so that we can have feedback before getting it out into schools and then watching it play out after some preliminary decisions have been made. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing the town halls and engagement sessions.
Right. Any other questions before we move on?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I haven't got any board members telling me they had a report for the committees. So do you have a report? All right.
Sorry. I just have an announcement that the audit committee is trying to find a day to meet. We're still trying to get everybody's, and I'm trying to find the paper that says the date. But it'll be the, I think, second week in March that we'll be having another, yes, the week of 3/11. And we're still looking at availability, but if you really like audit committees, you might be interested in that. And did I hear you found 2 people for the audit committee?
Yes, we'll be having students join the committee's upcoming meetings.
Okay, yeah, I'll let you know when we decided. Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to the consent agenda. Fellow board members, if there's any items you would like to pull for a separate vote, please state that now. All right. Ms. Bradshaw, are there any changes to the consent agenda?
No.
Great. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt the
Motion.
consent? Thank you. Director Hollins moves. Director Split seconds the adoption of the consent agenda. Is there any board discussion on the consent agenda? The board will now vote on resolution 7039 through 7042. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Student Director Kunsevi, please indicate your vote.
Yes.
Any abstentions? Consent agenda is as amended is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Representative Kunsevi unofficially voting yes. Great. Fellow board members, if there's any items you would like to be added on or discuss in next meetings or future meetings, please feel free to email, call. I'm always available almost.
Since you opened the invitation, I think we should have several more meetings to land the bond cost reductions because We have to do that in order to get the campaign going. So I know we've now got a meeting next week, but I think we need to have several more meetings so we can land that and be clear with our community and get going. That would just be my suggestion.
Thank you. All right, with that,
May I just ask if I support that, and I just want to be able to make sure staff is as prepared as possible. So I guess my question is, next week, are we setting the dates for the future meetings, or is there any way that we can name some dates now, or is that just completely inappropriate at the moment?
Roseanne.
I think Roseanne asked for some dates.
Roseanne has some dates for us.
Okay.
There's a informal work group tomorrow morning. We can't have a quorum with the board, but an informal work group that's gonna sit down and hopefully work through some things, try and find a path to land things.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to say that Roseanne is working to find, sorry. Deborah Kafori, Chief of Staff, was just going to add that Roseanne is working with you all to find dates in the future. Thanks. We're not waiting until next week.
great. Thank you. With that, the meeting is adjourned.